Test, test.
How you doing there, Congressman? How was the weekend?
What's the biggest tip you made?
Oh my God. How are you going to know which one?
I would like to call the Finance, Ways and Means Committee to order for February the 23rd, 2026. Madam Clerk, please take the roll. Members, let me have your attention just for a second. We are having some technical difficulties with the microphone, so you will be working your own microphone this morning. So you'll have to push the button. I know we've been reconditioned not to do that, but now you will be pushing the button to be able to speak. So, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Representatives Baum. Representative Baum. Boyd.
Here.
Camper. Representative Camper. Capley. Capley. Chisholm. Cochran.
Here.
Crawford.
Here.
Faison. Freeman.
Your turn.
Representative Grills.
Here.
Hale.
Here.
Representative Hawk. Representative Hawk. Representative Hicks of Washington.
Here.
Halsey.
Here.
Representative Lambert.
Here.
Love.
Here.
Miller. Representative Miller. Representative Moody. Moody. Representative Parkinson. Representative Parkinson. Reeves. Shaw.
Here.
Sparks.
Here.
Vaughn.
Here.
Representative Williams.
Here.
Zachary.
Here.
Vice Chairman Gillespie. Vice Chairman Gillespie. Chairman Hicks.
Here.
Chairman, you have 21 members present. You have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much. Members, any personal orders or announcements this morning? Hearing none and seeing none, today we will have 6 budget hearings, beginning with Tennessee Higher Education Commission. I'll ask them if they would please come forward. Members, please refer to your dashboard for all presentation documents. And so before we go any further, without objection, we are going to go out of session. We are out of session. All right, good morning.
Good morning.
Just introduce yourself. Thank you for being here.
All right, my name is Stephen Gentile. I am the Executive Director of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. It is an honor, as always, to be in front of you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee, and joined by all of our lovely higher education colleagues as well. You'll hear from all of us today. At Tennessee Higher Education Commission, we are committed to ensuring that higher education ensures student success, builds strong communities, and improves the lives of Tennesseans, whether it's public, private, nonprofit, for-profit. This is our goal and this is our vision to ensure that every Tennessean has access to a credential that will change their lives and make for a stronger Tennessee. When we think about student success here in Tennessee, we think about getting students through college as well as to college. Our financial aid program, I'll talk a bit about this more towards the end of my presentation. Our financial aid portfolio is the envy of the land. We're one of the top states in the country when it comes to financial aid. Over 250,000 scholarships are processed by our office every year to make sure that our Tennesseans have access to that financial aid, whether it's Hope Scholarship, dual enrollment, Tennessee State Student Assistance Award, or more. But we also ensure that students across the state of Tennessee know that they can access this financial aid that ensures their student success. We visit with 25,000 students and families per year. We go to every public high school in the state of Tennessee to make sure that they know about our financial aid opportunities so that they know what's available to them when they get into college. Getting into college, you've long heard about our outcomes-based funding formula. This has continued to incentivize the best behavior from our institutions to ensure that our students are getting across that finish line. Since the outcomes funding formula has come on board, on-time graduation rates in the state of Tennessee has more than doubled. Dual enrollment in the last 6 years has increased 35%, and workforce training in our community college sector has more than doubled in the last 6 years. To invest in the outcomes-based funding formula also ensures that we can keep tuition low at our institutions. Every $15 million that goes into that formula keeps tuition down 1%. So when we think about that student success, we think about the financial aid we're offering on that front end, and then also incentivizing students through on that back end. And thinking about building strong communities, this body has invested great amount of resources into our institutions when it comes to outcomes funding, but also capital investment, be it new buildings, renovated buildings, and capital maintenance. Every $1 you invest in our institutions yields $10 in higher education, economic workforce. But to put that into some context for you, over the last 10 years, our public institutions alone have produced over 100,000 graduates to go work in healthcare fields, 30,000 to work in education, to become our educators of the future, 37,000 to work in engineering-related fields, and 12,000 to work in agriculture and horticulture. Higher education is the foundation and the bedrock of our strong economic workforce. And your investment in our institutions allows us to continue to be that powerhouse. Higher education also improves the lives of Tennesseans. Higher education is your surest bet to keep Tennessee state employees recession-proof, to make sure that they have jobs even when the economy gets bad. Higher education allows them to be successful in that regard. It also improves their health, their civic engagement. Ensuring that our students has that access through financial aid and can complete and get through will make Tennessee stronger in the long run. We have a number of agency requests that we did not have come through in the governor's budget. I'd like to hit on just a few of them here. And looking towards our institutions, and we were up in outcomes this year, and we requested about $75 million in outcomes funding for our institutions. We received about $16 million in addition to about 1.5% in salary increases. So $74 million request, $16 million. At a $74 million request, our commission is able to cap tuition at 2.5%. At $16 million, that can go as high as 6.5%. So funding increases in the outcomes funding formula will allow us to, again, keep tuition low. But right now, it may not be as low as we can be given our request. We requested over $350 million in capital maintenance for our institutions. We received about $70 million of that. 50 of it is already recurring that came through. This state has been very generous in investing in new facilities and renovated facilities across our institutions. But we believe that investing in capital maintenance can lower what we request when it comes to new infrastructure. Let's keep well the buildings that we have in front of us. So fully funding capital maintenance will allow us to continue doing so going forward. We do have an agency request for the Tennessee Student Assistance Award of $12 million recurring. This is a non-lottery, it's a state-funded program. It is the state's need-based aid program. Funding $12 million in this program would allow us to give 6,500 more students that need-based aid grant in the future. Our long-term vision with TSAA is to ensure and make it simple for students that if you are Pell Grant eligible, that federal Pell Grant eligible, you can also receive the TSAA grant. We used to be there. We're no longer there. So there's a wait list when it comes to the TSAA grant. This is a program that currently serves 65,000 students. We have an initiative in the Eris Foundation called Careers Start Here. It's a $16 million recurring request. This is fund programs that have been identified to actually help students complete and get through college. And it's a threefold request. Number one is about $3 million to fund advising and getting students into college. Most of our poorest high schools in the state of Tennessee do not have a college counselor. They are unaware of the opportunities that higher education provides for them. Providing an advisor to those students will increase college enrollment by 6%. Most of our students enter community college academically underprepared, and TBR has put forward a coaching success program that ensures that students who are coached who are academically underprepared are more likely to be retained and to graduate. This investment will sustain that across all community colleges. And then finally, we've had great success with Tennessee Achieves and the Eros Foundation on completion grants, greatly increasing graduation rates across our institutions. That is a non-recurring funded project that's about to go away. Career Start Here will ensure that that is funded in perpetuity. And then last but not least, over this administration, THEC has overseen over $100 million in non-recurring GIVE grants, Governor's Investment in Vocational Education, across the state of Tennessee. This is, as I said, non-recurring, but what we do is we identify academic needs across Tennessee, and we help institutions put forward academic programs to meet those needs in rural and underserved areas. We have a request in front of you for $750,000 that would allow us in a recurring fashion to seed academic programs that we identify as being needed across the state of Tennessee. Those are our agency requests, but I wanted to take a moment also to circle back to what I mentioned earlier about financial aid. We are one of the top states in the country when it comes to financial aid. We are the envy of states across the country. In this governor's budget, there's a table that takes the state funding board's projections on revenue and expenditures and maps out the future trajectory of higher education lottery scholarship programs. This is a table that's in every governor's budget. For the first time in the history of the lottery program, there's a projected deficit in the coming years when it comes to lottery scholarships. In fact, there's a projected deficit for this year of just under $30 million. I'm happy to say that those projected estimates are based on conservative estimates on the conservative end of the ranges given to the state funding board. And this year, the revenue that's come in through Q2 suggests we will not be in a deficit this year, though we'll be closely watching Q3 and Q4 revenue. That said, lottery revenue in out years is probably not going to grow as much as it has in the past. Meanwhile, more and more students are going to college. More and more students are taking advantage of dual enrollment grants and the Hope Scholarship. Expenditures are projected to increase. Last week, at the request of the House Education Chair and the Senate Education Chair, we put forward part one of a memo that provides an overview of our lottery situation, the finances behind it, and also gives a primer on all the lottery scholarships. We shared that with Chairman Hicks. We'll be happy to share with anyone else on that. Later this year, we will come forward with part two of the report to recommend to this body, to this administration, potential changes in the lottery scholarship to avoid being in the deficit in future years. It is our agency's role to make sure that students across Tennessee know about the lottery scholarships. It's also our role to make sure that on the expenditure side, we're meeting revenue. And we look forward to working for you over the next year to develop recommendations on those lottery scholarships. Chairman Hicks, that's the conclusion of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you, Director Gentile, for your presentation. Really appreciate that. We do have several folks on the list for some questions, and I'll kick us off. A lot of the questions that I had, you actually touched on with your last few comments there. So I appreciate you actually digging into the net lottery proceeds and the projections for fiscal year 26. A lot of those questions I had, you actually answered. You mentioned that Tennessee is close to being number one in the nation for financial aid. My question is, if we look at across the country, what are other states that have financial aid, lottery scholarships? What's it looking like for them? So to kind of give us an idea of maybe what other states are experiencing, are we lagging, or we kind of give us an update there?
We are unique in our 20-year history of having lottery scholarships that we've not had to have this conversation before. Georgia, who led with the Hope Scholarship years ago, had to revisit what their offerings were. Other states have as well. Where we're not unique is that lottery revenues across the country, and I can't speak for every single state, but in general, have been flattening or declining. At the very least, not growing like they have been. Now, there are different theories of why this might be. Sports betting might be one of them. Here in Tennessee, it might be how you access the lottery games to begin with, or others might say that perhaps it's a different cohort of people who are buying lottery. Maybe they're aging out. The program is aging out. There are many potential theories behind it, but it's not unique to Tennessee, what we're seeing with lottery revenue.
So it's almost right now, just looking ahead, it's kind of like a train coming down the track, even though those proceeds are thankfully going to be good for this fiscal year and the current fiscal year. Looking ahead, where in your mind, what would the reductions look like if we had to do something? And I know we could hypothetical it to death, but kind of looking forward, what would be your thoughts on that?
Well, right now we are in collection mode. We've got ideas that we've been generating internally, but also in discussion. I've got conversations with our peers behind us today, tomorrow, and the weeks ahead to also identify. We've had great growth and expansion in the programs. We used to have 4 programs starting off 20 years ago, all centered around hope. We now have 13 programs here in Tennessee. There's a potential for a last in, first out approach when it comes to looking at the lottery portfolio. Back in 2022 and a little bit in 2023, when lottery growth was big, and at the time sports betting was 100% going towards lottery programs. There was great growth in those programs in dual enrollment. We've seen great growth in dual enrollment grants. You can use the Hope Scholarship for graduate degrees if you graduate before the 5-year period. There are many things that we introduced 3 or 4 years ago that if you take a last in, first out approach, would be the first ones that we look at. There are also opportunities to look at where Hope Scholarships go, how long students can have access to it, and also the thresholds that allow you to hold and maintain the Hope. There's so many different ways that you can look at it, but the first one is the last in, first out approach.
All right. Thank you very much for that answer. Next on the list, Chairman Williams, you're recognized.
Thank you, Director Gentile. Just a question about promise. Obviously, it sounds when you say things like, we're not going to, for the first time in lottery history, we're not going to put money in out years, I think until FY30. What is, from Tennessee Promise perspective, what are the significant challenges for Tennessee Promise as it relates to that, it being stable going forward and predictable for students?
Yes, sir. So we are grateful to be in a position with Tennessee Promise that it is funded not by the lottery directly, but by an endowment. And the endowment right now is cresting over $1.3 billion, and the yields on that pay for Promise with lots of good buffer on it too. So the trajectory of Tennessee Promise, the biggest challenge there is just making sure that all students know about it and that they have access to it. Now, at the same time, Tennessee Promise is a last dollar scholarship. So after state financial aid, federal financial aid, state financial aid is put in there, that's when Tennessee Promise will put in a subsidy to make sure that you are tuition free. Should there be changes to the Hope Scholarship or other lottery programs that say reduce the value of those programs, Tennessee Promise expenditure would increase to fill that gap. So that's the biggest challenge when you look at, say, right sizing the ship when it comes to lottery, is that it might make Promise more expensive. Right now, the endowment is in a really good position. That does not keep me up at night, that inevitability, but it's a consideration to have for sure.
Would you say that the reason why the endowment is in good shape? I remember, former commissioner of ECD here and former the brains behind why Tennessee Promise started here in Tennessee. There were goals that were ingrained into us. I think it was 55%. Called it the drive to 55% of we wanted students to be credentialed in the state by 2025, I think it was. How do we even measure that anymore? Or what are the numbers compared to what the original goal is? Because when you look at the growth in Promise. And I think in 2022, there were about 16,000 participants, and that the stability of that could be that those last dollars are unneeded because of something else we're funding, because now we only have 11,000 people in it. So if you could tell me a little update on where we are as far as those credentials and what your views are in why the reduction from its highest point of 16,000 students to
Yes, sir.
just a little over 11,000 now.
Yes, sir. To the point of the drive to 55, right now we are, and I say right now because it's always 2 years behind in the estimates. We'll know 2025 data in 2027. Right now, we just got information for 2024, and we are cresting just over 50%. So we'll get close to 55% when we get the final numbers settled and done. That's point one. Now, we were on track to definitely be at 55% if not for the pandemic. With the pandemic came a decline in college going rates immediately, and they have gone up just a little bit since then. A big reason why Tennessee Promise is down relative to where it has been, the community college sector specifically is very dependent on the state of the economy. When the economy is bad or underperforming, that's when students flock to our institutions. That was true when Tennessee Promise was first settled back after the Great Recession, and then that increased over time. The economy has been very strong, and so we've not seen a big rebound when it comes to Tennessee Promise or Tennessee Reconnect since the pandemic. That said, should the economy dip, that's when we'll see a greater expenditure when it comes to Tennessee Promise. Now, looking forward, over the next 10 years, the same group that projected that Tennessee needed 55% by 2025 are now saying it's about 63% by 2030. 63% of our adult working population should have a credential in order to meet the demands of our economy. So there's still places to go going forward that ensures that we need to be committed to helping our students access the financial aid so they can enroll. But the Drive to 55 and the vision that was put forward did a lot for higher education, and we're almost there.
Yeah, so if the numbers were to stay the same, though, would the endowment be the ability to fund those Promise scholarships for in this instance, if we grew at the trajectory that it was in the beginning, and we would be somewhere around 17, 18,000 students instead of 11,000, would that, if we were to do that or to change our goal from 63% to 2030, would the endowment be in jeopardy based upon the spending?
I need to preface this by saying that that is controlled by the treasurer and the projections there. And so they would have the best answers for that. But the returns that we're getting from the endowment right now would suggest that we have enough room to merit that increase.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next on the list, Speaker Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Director. Good to have you here this morning. We're actually, before I ask my questions related to nuclear workforce funding, we were up here talking about the Drive to 55. And I think we all agree that the Drive to 63 does not have quite the same ring as Drive to 55, but just as a sidebar. But just a quick question regarding nuclear workforce funding. I believe in Budget 25, we appropriated $10 million non-recurring for GIVE grants with a focus on nuclear development, the nuclear sector. And you had referenced GIVE grants just briefly in your presentation. Can you describe and give us a little more detail if those funds have all been distributed and what the focus on nuclear has actually been?
So we are directly distributing $250,000 to the institutions that currently have nuclear programs. That includes UT Knoxville, Rowan State, Chattanooga State, and Tennessee Tech. So it's $1 million that's going there to help and support their needs and their programs. We are working with all the state agencies that are participating in this nuclear growth and fund on identifying the curricular needs of the nuclear industry. It's more than just nuclear engineering. So we have a study right now that we're funding to get that curriculum identified so that we can then translate that into GIVE grants going forward. So that money will be spent there. It's not yet gone out the door.
Okay, thank you. One more, Mr. Chairman, if I can. We've also, the governor and the governor's proposed budget, it's $10 million non-recurring for nuclear workforce grants. Can you describe a little about how those funds will be distributed and what will qualify as nuclear related?
Yes, sir. Part of that will be determined by the study that we're engaging in right now. It could be a continued forward of the grants. We've got the good grants tend to be lasting in nature for 3 to 5 years. So it would be used to subsidize that. It could be used for other things as well. We're right now in that process of identifying those needs for the nuclear industry, and the second iteration of that will help support that going forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next on the list will be Chairman Hicks. Chairman Hicks, Washington, you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, thank you for being here. These questions are around capital maintenance. I think you'd mentioned that earlier. Statewide, what is the current amount of deferred maintenance, and how much is that figure increasing annually?
So the request that we put forward of $350 million is to meet that annual increase that we project in deferred maintenance. So $350 million is what you can estimate as being the annual need to meet the capital maintenance needs. In total, we're talking about billions of dollars in deferred capital maintenance. So even if we were to fund $350 million per our request, that's a relative share, but there's still a much greater need, and we're talking the billions of dollars when it comes to deferred maintenance.
How do you determine what maintenance projects receives the funding? And is there a cap on the amount of maintenance that the individual project can receive?
Sir, there's no cap on an individual project, but how we determine the needs of our institutions is based on several factors. Number one is the overall age of your facilities, the use of your facilities. Science and engineering labs would cost more than the humanities building, for instance, and this capital maintenance needs. So that's overall size and use of those facilities determine an institution's need and share relative to the overall. That then is looked at for all institutions, and we then prioritize it based on the institutions and what they come forward. But we at THEC do not say this envelope repair is of a greater need than a roof repair. We just allocate the needs to our institutions.
Okay, so certain campuses probably then does have challenges because of the age and because of the maintenance that they need.
Yes, sir.
And the surrounding infrastructure, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next on the list, Representative Love, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Dr. Gentile, for your presentation. I did have a follow-up question to my colleague about capital maintenance. With your request there, $285 million, can you roughly estimate how many projects you may be able to accomplish with that amount?
No, it's okay. It's typically about 70 projects in total that would be given to this $250 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, Representative Shaw, you're recognized. Okay, members, I have no one else on the list for Dr. Gentile. Would anyone like to? Yes, I do. Leader Lambert, you're recognized. Just press the button.
Mr. Chairman, you normally don't allow us to control our own microphones. I appreciate that today. You're giving us a little more freedom this week.
Little technical difficulties this morning, so
All right.
you're recognized.
Just to flesh out a little bit of what you were talking about earlier, when you were proposing multiple different pathways on how to shore up the lottery scholarship programs, when you mentioned last in, first out, are you referencing programs or students?
When it comes to that last in, first out approach, first of all, any change that we would recommend would be in the context of what's the best for the students, first and foremost. So there's that with all portfolio of the program, the 13 programs I'm talking about. The last in, first out is not necessarily about the scholarship specifically, but the growths in the scholarship that occurred most recently. So that's just the first place where we look into. That's been suggested by others who've been we've been talking to about that, just first and foremost. But the number one thing that's going to drive us, sir, is going to be what's best for the students, what's working well, and what do we want to make sure that continues to work well. I think all the scholarships specifically are doing a good job by our students, but there are others that are moving the needle more than others.
Leader, you're recognized.
Yeah, certainly we opposed to some sort of an arbitrary, whenever a scholarship came on board, to just getting rid of it based on the timing of when it was passed by this legislature or implemented by you all. I would much prefer that we focus on how do we maintain our best and brightest students here in the state of Tennessee with the best financial resources available to them within whatever amount of resources we have. I mean,
sir.
I would like for us all to take a very holistic approach on this program, because we have over the years basically added programs as folks came up with good ideas to try to help students, and looked at just that window of time when they were added. Over the next year or two, I think we have an opportunity to look at the entire portfolio of programs that we have and say, why are we losing some of our best students to other universities that seem to be much more, or other university systems and college systems and TCAT systems that are more focused on the quality of the program and the quality of the students that they are maintaining and retaining, versus just, hey, these are the programs that we have because that's what it's developed over the years. So it's a chance to take a whole reset at the entire program. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I have no one else on the list for Dr. Gentile. So thank you, Dr. Gentile, for being here and answering our questions and for your presentation. I will now ask the Tennessee Board of Regents, and I do see Dr. Tidings making her way to the front. So if you would please have a seat, and we will begin with introductions. Dr. Tidings, good morning.
Good morning, Chairman, Representatives. Thank you for allowing us to be here with you today to talk to you about the Tennessee Board of Regents. I do have at the table with me Executive Vice Chancellor Dr. Alicia Fox, who is over all of our financial aspects of the system. So when we get to those questions, I will certainly be leaning on her. This morning, I always want to talk to you about our enrollment increase. I like to start with that, and I'm very proud to tell you that we are up 7% at our community colleges, 14.2% at our technical colleges, and overall 7%, 14.2% at TCAT, and 5% at the community colleges. We are also up in dual enrollment. You heard Executive Director Gentile talk to you about dual enrollment and the huge growth that it had, and the majority of that has occurred at our technical colleges. 6% at community college growth, 21% at our technical colleges. But I'm most proud to show you the number of degrees that were issued over this last year. While it's great to have an increase in enrollment, it is even better to have more people graduating than ever before. We are at our highest level at 23,166 for 2025. So very proud of that fact, very proud of what the colleges were able to accomplish. But this also reflects back to what Dr. Gentile talked to you with the performance funding and how it is not fully funded this year. 57.6% overall for the entire state, but that equated to 10.5% for the Tennessee Board of Regents. Our colleges cannot continue to do what they're doing with increases in enrollment, increased numbers of certificates and diplomas being given out without being funded. So we do ask you for full consideration of those amounts as you go forward with your budget process. In workforce and career, you also heard Dr. Gentile talk about the increases here. 315 business and industries were served by our college this year, 60,000 unique individuals served. That equated to over 2,035,000 workforce training hours this past year. That's in addition to the 23,000 awards that were given out. These are all the companies that we worked with across the state, increasing what they were doing with either hiring new individuals or upskilling individuals within their industry. And that did include a 203% increase at our technical colleges. Again, very proud of that fact, the work that they're doing to sponsor and serve our industries. Also, over this next year, the Tennessee Board of Regents is going to be strategically focused on 4 areas. These were developed in conjunction with the Department of Economic Development, looking at what our colleges currently offer across the state. We know that we need to continue to increase in the areas of aviation, artificial intelligence, ceramic tile, and nuclear energy. We will be targeting these specifically for growth, again, because of what's happening with companies that are relocating to the state of Tennessee or growing within the state of Tennessee. There's also a few programs that I'd like to talk to you specifically about that we are focused on over this next year at our colleges. The first one of those is the Foster Youth Forward program. I'm very excited about this program. As it is being developed, we have a pilot program that started at TCAT Knoxville. It is in conjunction with the mayor of Knoxville, his office, and the START Center, as well as employer partners including Stowers Machinery, Harrison Construction, Associated Building Contractors, and the Oak Ridge National Lab. The goal of this program is to make sure that individuals that are in high school, are still in high school, but before they turn 18, have some type of credential before they graduate. I know that many of you have heard about that cliff that these individuals hit when they turn 18. They're put out of the system. There are some structures in place to support them, but not enough at this point. What we want to do is help them have jobs to be able to be employed so that they can either go directly into the workforce or continue their education and be able to have a place to live, to be able to afford to live out within the community. Another area that you're also very familiar with is our Correctional Education Investment, or CEI, which the governor has supported for quite some time now. Through this investment initiative, TBR now delivers 19 programs across every Tennessee prison within the state. It involves 7 of our community colleges and 8 of our TCATs. Last fall, over 25,000 incarcerated Tennesseans gained self-paced online access to education through what's called BiPath tablets. This is linking learning directly to career pathways. This effort, which offers the Technology Foundations course, builds math, reading, and data literacy skills and counts as the first 30 clock hours in over 90% of our TCAT programs, putting learners directly on a path to a credential and then to a full career. We really appreciate the efforts that we've had to work with the prisons. They've been very great to work with. They've also been helping us to make sure that these individuals, once they're released, they follow up to make sure that we've got no recidivism with these individuals because they are being employed. Tennessee continues to set the national standard in correctional education. And the CEI program was recently recognized by the Institute for College Access and Success as a national model for correctional education excellence, citing the strong collaboration among the Department of Corrections, the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, the higher education institutions, and our nonprofit partners. And finally, I'd like to talk about the Middle Tennessee Healthcare Alliance. Our colleges are proud partners in this rural healthcare initiative that will have a profound impact on your constituents. And we have long provided training for a broad range of programs focused on improving the quality of care available to all Tennesseans. The Rural Healthcare Initiative identifies specific demands for more nurses and surgical technologists. Now we are taking the critical work to a higher level through the Middle Tennessee Healthcare Alliance. This initiative is a collaborative effort among 4 community colleges and 10 TCATs to address this critical shortage. In those 2 priority fields of nursing and surgical tech and 2 radiological technology and medical lab technology programs in the greater Nashville regional counties, they will serve the workforce needs. This is formed in partnership with the Nashville Chamber of Commerce, Vanderbilt University Medical Center, HCA, and Ascension. The Alliance responds to persistent demand in the high-growth counties of Davidson, Rutherford, Williamson, Murray, Montgomery, and Sumner. And to close the serious gap between workforce supply and demand in these fields, our community colleges will expand associate degree programs in the areas previously listed. And in our budget proposals for 2027, the governor's proposed budget included $18.3 million for capital maintenance, $2.25 million for the correctional education initiative that I talked about, and $1 million non-reoccurring for the CEI apprenticeship pilot that we have begun to work on. A list here is of the proposed capital projects that were not funded, and I thought I would just put this up for you in case you saw one that caught your interest and you really wanted to get behind and support because it was in your area. We'd be glad to work with you. And then also TBR special initiatives that were not funded, in addition to the one that Dr. Gentile mentioned, the $16 million for the Career Start Here, our counseling project that we did in conjunction with THEC, Tennessee Achieves, and the Ayers Foundation. We also put forward a physical safety and security ask and a cybersecurity enhancement ask. Out of all of these, the cybersecurity is the one that keeps me up the most at night. As I'm sure all of you are aware, with 37 campuses, at any moment in time, there is a risk of somebody doing something they shouldn't be doing to get into our system. So we are in constant need of people to watch over this, to monitor this, and to make sure that we have the place to correct them when something does happen. I do want to give you a quick update on the $1.5 billion TCAP master plan that you have also graciously funded over the years. You know that we have had many facilities grand openings. So many of you have been able to be there to support us, and we are greatly appreciative every time you come to one of our grand openings. The Tennessee workforce facilities across Tennessee, what you see here are the ones that we have had grand openings for already. This is just a few pictures of the ones that we've had. In Q1, these are the ones that we opened. In Q2, we have substantial completion on the projects that you see listed here. Q3, estimated substantial completion that you will see on the map here. And Q4, these are the projects that will be finished out by the end of the year. We do have a few that are going to run into 2027. This was due to land purchasing that we had to do for some of these projects. So these will be the ones that will be in Q1 of 2027. All projects still on time and still on budget. So I'm very thankful to our facilities department, very grateful that we have a strong facilities department that's been able to manage this in over 2 years to have all 37 of these projects up and ready for our students. And before I leave, I do have to tell you about our warranty program. To date, we have issued 253,000 warranties, and we still have 0 claims. So very thankful again for the work that is happening at our colleges, because we do continue to power Tennessee. And with that, sir, I'll be happy to take any questions.
All right. Thank you, Chancellor Tidings. Very good information. And thank you for your presentation. We do have several folks on the list. Let's begin with Leader Lamberth. Leader Lamberth, you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here. As always, appreciate the work y'all do. You mentioned $1.5 billion in investment, but specifically there's about $900 million of that goes to 28 different projects throughout the state. And as you just put up on the board there, that all those should be completed by fall of 2026. I know there's a few programs that will come on after that, beyond the ones even you listed there, just because they were funded later. But once all the projects statewide are completed, so we'll say once we hit sometime in 2027, and hopefully all these are on board, how much statewide capacity have the TCATs increased as a result of the investment? So in other words, where were you as far as number of programs and students are in those programs when we began this $1 billion plus journey, and where are we going to be, and where are the people of Tennessee going to be once we finish that $1.5 billion investment?
Yes, sir. We estimate that it'll give us an additional capacity of over 30,000 across the state. And remember that that's not a one-time 30,000, that's a revolving every 18 months 30,000.
And that's 30,000 new students that could access that.
Yes, sir.
How many programs is that spread across?
I would have to get back to you on that.
That's okay. You can send it to the chairman. He can send it out to us or shoot it back to us. And if you don't mind, within those programs, if you can kind of highlight, which programs are being expanded. I do think that that's one of the things that you all are able to do much better than even the longer term programs that are out there, is you're much more nimble as to how you can shift depending upon where the needs are in the workforce. So thank you.
Absolutely. And just a quick round up number, 287 was right around the number of programs that we had, but to the point that you made, being able to change on a dime, that's what we have to do when a business industry comes in and says we need X, then we need to be able to create that new program and get that to the industry very quickly.
Well, sorry, Mr. Chairman, one more follow-up. For instance, I visited the TCAT there in Portland that's associated with the Nashville campus not long ago, and they have a new licensed electrician program. And the young adults that were in that program, there were 100 students that were in there, and they had, I think it's 200 on the wait list just for that one specific program for licensed electricians. And I asked what I thought was a good question. It turned out it was a dumb question because I said, well, how many of these students, upon getting their certification through you all, get employment within, say, 6 weeks? And the guy looked at me like I had 3 heads, and he said, look, we've never had a student that gets a credential here that leaves that doesn't have a job within 24 hours. And I said, oh, well, so that's much better than I anticipated. So I'm sure there are lots of programs like that throughout the state. Thank you.
Yes, sir. System-wide, we have a 97% placement rate.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, Chairman Vaughn. You are recognized, sir.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that. And Chancellor, it's good to see you and your team here, all members of your team. One thing that I would like to point out before I start asking about one of my concerns these days down at the site is a comment with regards to you, and we heard it from the THEC director too, and that's the deferred maintenance issues that are coming up. And I want to just remind my colleagues that it's great to cut ribbons on nice, shiny new buildings, but if we can't take care of them, we're going to foster a culture of disposable capital projects. And that's something that we've got to come to terms with as a legislature. It's not as fun to be there when the HVAC units get changed out, but if we don't start taking care of what we've got, then we're going to be turning things over and demolishing some things, which is we got to start questioning the value of that investment. But let's talk about the site down there at Stanton, formerly known as the mega site. How are we've got about $50 million invested in your facility alone down there, plus I think it's about $4 million recurring.
Yes, sir.
How are you folks handling the pivot away from Ford? Because that's not a very densely populated area. And we thought that if they built it, they would come. Have you begun looking at maybe reprogramming that facility, and what are you looking at with regards to that, if you can share with us?
Yes, sir, absolutely. And even when Ford started, just trying to decide several years ago exactly what this was going to look at, we knew that we immediately needed to start using the building, which we did. We have the TCAT in there, as well as we have Dyersburg State that teaches classes in there also. It is full. We have a full capacity there. So for us, this has been a godsend to have that campus there. While it is not providing as much for Ford as it was intended to in the beginning, it is providing for that community. I was talking with the president just earlier this week, and she was asking for permission to add an additional nursing section in that area. So it is drawing students from all around that section, and we're really excited to say that it is full.
Mr. Chairman, if I could have a follow-up?
Please go right ahead.
All right, thank you, ma'am. And do you see that it's cannibalizing any of your other programs? Are you seeing in the local area any drops in enrollment due to folks funneling there?
No, sir, because if you're just to the comment that Leader Lambert made, we have wait lists everywhere. So to have this facility in that area, people are able to go and not be on the wait list immediately. So it really did provide a need.
Thank you, Chancellor. Sometimes you ask a question that you don't know the answer to, and you like the answer better than what you thought it was going to be. So thanks for that good news.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next on the list will be Chairman Baum. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Hicks, and thank you for your good work, Chancellor Tidings. I've got a question about dual enrollment students with TCAT centers. Could you tell us what % of those students leave high school with some kind of certification or certificate that would lead directly into a job?
I don't have the exact percentage out of that growth number that are leaving with the job, but it is a good number of them. They are able to complete a program. And for many of them, and if you will recall, one of the things that you did several years ago was to make it so that when a dual enrollment student left high school, if they were already engaged in a program, they didn't have to go on a wait list when they got to the college. We sort of moved them up on the line. So we have a large number that are enrolling in the college if they have not finished the program by the time they're at graduation from high school.
Okay, and one statistic that this committee has is the percent of high school dual enrollment students associated with the TCAT Center that end up being college going compared with dual enrollment students with a community college or a four-year college or university. And it's lower for the dual enrollment TCAT students. The college going rate is lower. Do you think this is because they're leaving high school with a certificate or a license or something like that, and they don't need to go on?
Many of them are employed the minute that they walk out of high school. Yes, sir.
Okay, and maybe for those that don't go on to a TCAT center out, beyond their dual enrollment time, do you track those students?
We do. We try to. We try to find out. But one of the patterns that we've seen is while they may not go immediately after leaving high school, they will return to us later. They may get a job and then realize that they need to continue to upskill. They will either return to the TCAT or they'll go on to community or university level.
Okay, and one last question on a little bit different subject. Seems like there's an increased emphasis in some of the funding formulas with on-time graduation. Do you have an opinion with respect to the community colleges on whether it's wise or unwise to go to move to a greater emphasis in the funding formula with on-time graduation, which for a community college might be 2 years, as opposed to maybe a 3-year window?
70% of the students that enter our doors need some type of remedial education. For the majority of them to graduate in 2 years, it can be daunting. So for many of our students, to say that they must finish in 2 years could be a problem. They may just need to take a little bit longer in order to do so. Many of our students, the majority of our students are adults. They're working. They have families. It is difficult for them to finish a program sometimes in 2 years.
Okay, thank you for that perspective. That's useful to know, and I'm not sure if Dr. Gentile has left or not, but I appreciate you sharing that.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, Representative Garrett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had to push a button. Too used to them doing it. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. My question surrounds correction educational initiatives, specifically the mobile training units. I think there's a non-recurring budget item for $2.3 million for these training labs in the prisons. And I guess I've got two questions. First is, will they be available both for the privately run prisons and also the state-run prisons? And then after you answer that question, my follow-up question, well, how do we determine priority? Will they be going all over the state? How will we determine the best needs for these mobile labs?
The mobile labs will be used in all prisons, and the priority will be where we feel like there's the greatest need to take them at that time, where we may have the largest interest in that program at that time, or the greatest employment opportunity for individuals once they get out of prison at that time. We also can use these labs with our regular population of students. We envision that we will take these labs at times to high schools as well. So we see them as a greater use than just the prison population.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, Representative Sparks, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chancellor. I see Kim McCormick in the audience. Kim, raise your hand. Sorry for your loss of late leader Gerald McCormick. Went to his funeral, great send off, and just such a great leader, had such a great heart. But I want to thank you and your staff. I happened to see Dr. Torrance of the day of Motlow at the Rutherford County Chamber of Commerce and our Capital Connection that he always attends, and want to thank Patrick Boggs and his counterpart, John Williams, for always being so attentive. One of the areas I wanted to ask about is mental health among students. And, we've seen seemed like a rise of suicide, especially among females. I think it was about a little over a year and a half ago, we put together a conference, and it was really coincidental when I called Patrick and I said, hey, what's the chances of me meeting with the chancellor? And we talk about this. He says, Mike, we already have a meeting with her. And I was about to call you. So the meeting was already done. So y'all are like a step in front me and us on many occasions. But can you try to address just the mental health aspects and what y'all are doing to try to reach some of these students?
Yes, and it is somewhat of a long, elated question there, or answer to give back to you. The Career Start Here counseling money that Dr. Gentile talked to you about, that we need so much for our colleges to be able to do a good job with the counseling. One of the things that we've been working on for some time now is looking at AI and how do we use AI in our counseling processes so that AI does the data work, the background work, and our counselors can spend more face time with those students, those individuals, to hopefully see these types of issues that might be going on with the student and intervene long before it becomes a major problem with the student. We've got several pilots going right now. For several years, we've been doing work with a university outside of the state. We've also done some great work with UT looking at how we use AI for these systems.
Yeah, you're recognized.
Yes. What do y'all partner with the Jason Foundation, Clark Flat, any of them? Do you discuss anything with them?
We will partner with every single foundation we can find in the state that wants to talk to us about partnering with coming in and working with our students.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, Representative Shaw, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chancellor, for being here. And let me thank you for keeping me informed about all the good things that's going on down at Stanton. I did want to ask you, there's a Buc-ee's being built about 12 miles or so down the road. Have they reached out to you, or will you be involved in any training for that Buc-ee's coming
They
up?
haven't reached out yet. They do have their own training program, but I feel sure they're going to be employing some of our graduates because of their wonderful pay scale that they have. So we're looking forward to that being there. And I think too, just for clarity, for everyone's sake, with that site, Ford is going to be opening. We are confident that Ford is going to be producing a truck there. We don't have the exact designs or the exact timeline, but they are continuing to tell us that they are going to be there. So we will be prepared when they're ready. Buc-ee's will too.
Representative Shaw, you're recognized, but the timing of that question is very strange, knowing that you're retiring and then asking about the training program at Buc-ee's. That does make me.
I'm thinking about getting a job there.
I picked up on that. Representative Shaw, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did have a chance to visit the site, and I noticed that based upon what you were doing for Ford, it's not going to be a whole lot of changes to be made in terms of what TCAT will be doing compared to what Ford will be doing. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, they still have not clarified whether it will be completely gas engine, but of course that's what we've been doing forever, is training on gas engines. We did add the EV portion of it, so we do still need technicians that know how to service the electric vehicle, and we will have those and how to work on them. We just won't be training people to work on the line to produce electric vehicles at this point.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if you happen to be in West Tennessee and see me at Buc-ee's, you'll know I got a job there. Thank you.
Duly noted. Members, I have no one else on the list for the Chancellor. So thank you very much, Chancellor. Thank you and your staff for being here. Thank you for your presentation. That brings us to the University of Tennessee, and I do see President Boyd making his way, as well as CFO David Miller. So if you all would, and just introduce yourself for the record, and you may begin. Thank you all for being here.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Randy Boyd, President of the University of Tennessee System. And I have David Miller, the CFO of the University of Tennessee System, also the manager of the slides. So thank you, David. So first off, I just want to start by saying thank you and how much I appreciate all of you and for the support you have provide for the University of Tennessee and all of higher education. I say this a lot. I travel around the country, get to visit with other university leaders. They don't have the kind of situation that we have here. In fact, just this last Friday, I went up to visit Wichita State University in Kansas. And it was a great visit. They do a lot of great work with DOD, fixing aircraft for the military. Got to see some great demonstrations of B-2 bombers, and it's a really impressive facility. However, I wouldn't want to trade places with them. Their state is not well or managed physically like the state of Tennessee is. They're always having budget shortfalls. They don't get regular increases in operating income. They get no capital maintenance or capital for new projects. So I just want to let you know that we all, speaking for all of our colleagues, really value the partnership that we have with all of you. Appreciate the support, how you run the state, and how you value higher education. So thank you. As a show of my appreciation, I'm going to just limit myself to 5 minutes and 5 slides. At least that's the goal. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. First, I want to just give you an update on how things are going at the University of Tennessee. So we're continuing to grow. We started off the decade. We're making this the greatest decade in the history of the University of Tennessee. We started off the decade with 52,000 students. We've grown to 65,000. Our goal is 84,000 by the end of the decade in 2030. That's an increase of 20.2% over the 5 years. Just a quick note about the last year. UT Knoxville grew 4.4%. That's an additional 2,000 students. Chattanooga set a new record, over 2,000 students. UT Southern grew by over 8%. Martin, in a part of our state which is seeing declining population, had another 8% increase, which is the second year in a row. And even our health science center is growing. More importantly, we're keeping the students that come. Our retention's up over 5% over the last 5 years. UT Southern, by the way, when we acquired Martin Methodist in 2021, their retention was 51%. It's now 79%, second best in our system. They're killing it. We're so proud of the work that they're doing there. And four-year graduation rate, as Chancellor Tiding mentioned, it's not about enrollment or retention. At the end of the day, it's about producing graduates. And the four-year graduation or the degrees awarded is up 16.2%. I'm going to talk a little bit more about research funding in a moment and why that's important, but research funding is up 21% so far this decade. Here's a new stat that we just got, a survey that came out recently. We interviewed all of our customers, which are the employers, and asked them, how are our students doing? 98% said that they were prepared to succeed. Not only qualified, but they're prepared to succeed. So we're really happy with that result. So people ask me a lot, so what keeps you up at night? What are you worried about? The thing that worries us most is this misperception about higher education, that if you go to college, it's not affordable anymore. If you graduate, you're going to end up with lots of debt, and there's really no jobs with the degrees that you have. None of those things are true. And I can speak for the University of Tennessee, but I think this is true for most of my colleagues in the room as well. So at the University of Tennessee, over the last 5 years, tuition's increased by an average of just 1.4%, which is way below inflation. So you can make the argument that a degree at the University of Tennessee today is a better value, cheaper than it was just 5 years ago. So we're beginning more and more improving the value. Also, 2 years ago, 46% of our students graduated with no debt. We were proud of that number. That's gotten even better. Last year, 55% of our students graduated with zero debt. And of those that had debt, 2 years ago, the average debt was $26,000. Last year, the average debt was only $23,000. Our goal by 2030 is to get that to $20,000. So we've got a lot of initiatives around continue to make sure that we have more students graduate with no debt, and those that do graduate with debt with less debt. And by the way, I want to take a moment to say thank you. The reason why we're able to do that is because of the support you provide to us through the financial aid directly to the students and through the funding formula. We have some internal programs as well. Something that we're particularly proud of is something called the UT Promise. We created it in 2019. Today, we've been modifying it ever since. But today, you have a family income of under $75,000, which is 2/3 of all Tennesseans. You can come to any one of our campuses completely free of tuition and fees. So again, we thank you for all the support to help us make that happen. Just want to talk just a moment about innovation and the things that we're doing around research. You may have read some of the stats from ECD. One of the things that we're really proud of in the East Tennessee region is $9 billion worth of investment in new nuclear. That wouldn't have happened if it was not for the Oak Ridge Innovation or Oak Ridge National Labs and the University of Tennessee and the nuclear program that we have there. So the research that we're doing is paying dividends in economic development. We're working on or leading the country in quantum science, and advanced materials, and artificial intelligence, and put still continued emphasis on the number one industry in our state, which is agriculture. We now have 2 R1 universities. UT Health Science Center became an R1 university last year, which we're really excited about that. And let's go to the last slide. So two more slides. Let's say what we're thankful for, the cost increases that were proposed in the governor's budget. For the formula units, $12 million, which has been mentioned by both the DBR and THAC. While we're thankful, it was much less than what we've been accustomed to. It's going to put some challenges for some of our campuses, in particular UT Martin. Very Thankful for the increase in insurance. Not every state is able to do that. That's a very meaningful. We appreciate that. Also, I want to come back to talking about what we've got for the specialized units when we talk about some of the things we need going forward. What's not on the slide is capital projects. One of the most important thing that was in the governor's proposed budget this year was funding for a new College of Medicine at the UT Health Science Center. I'll maybe take a step back and say, I can remember back when I was Commissioner of Economic and Community Development, it was easy to brag about the state of Tennessee in so many ways. We have like top 3 in infrastructure, roads and bridges. We had AAA ratings on our debt. So whatever promises we can make, we could stand behind. This great educational system with the Tennessee Promise, our great TCATs at our universities, so many things we could brag about. The one thing we never talk about in economic development is the health of our population, our public health. In almost every chart, we're in the bottom 5-10% in public health. We can't improve that unless we have healthcare professionals. And the UT Health Science Center produces those healthcare professionals. And the College of Medicine is the critical facility that makes that happen. Over 70% of the dentists come through the UT Health Science Center. Over 40% of our doctors come through the UT Health Science Center. We had a facility that was 70 years old, wasn't designed for the purpose it was being used for in the first place. We absolutely needed to replace it. Not only does this help us sustain what we've been doing in the past, but it's also going to help us increase the number of healthcare professionals. Over the first 5 years after we build this, we'll produce over 1,450 additional healthcare professionals. We're going to increase the number of PAs by 30%. We're going to increase the doctor cohort from 170 to 230 a year. This is critical, not just, so when I think about this investment for you, this isn't something for UT or for UT Health Science Center or for Memphis. It's for the entire state of Tennessee. The only way we're going to be able to improve our public health is by producing more healthcare professionals. So we're very thankful for this budget, this investment. Next slide. Finally, the things that we would request additional consideration. So while we're appreciative of the funds that the state gave us for the salary pool, the specialized units aren't on a funding formula. So the only money they get is the special allocation. The money that we were given for the specialized units, which, as a reminder, that's the Health Science Center, the College of Veterinary Medicine, and Extension. So they're not on a funding formula. The money that they were given was $2.1 million short for us just to be able to give our employees a 1.5% raise. So we're asking to be able to have an additional $2.1 million so we can at least afford to give our employees at those facilities a 1.5% raise. At the UT Martin campus, we're looking for some additional funds, $5.6 million, or a total of $6 million, for a new health clinic at that campus. The health clinic, I went by there just a few months ago just to check it out for myself, is an old house that's about 50 years old. Sick kids and healthy kids all sit on the same couch in the little living room in the front. You have to go up some non-ADA stairs to get to the upstairs where they do counseling, and all the supplies are stacked in a bathtub in the upstairs. It's just not adequate for a campus that's growing 8% a year with over 8,000 students now. So we're asking for additional support there. And then lastly, again, the number one industry in our state is agriculture. If we want to keep our farmers on the land, they need to become more efficient. We're asking for an additional $3 million, or $3.1 million a year for precision agriculture, to provide technology to our farmers so they can be more efficient and stay on their land. And with that, I'll conclude my remarks and turn it over to you for any questions. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, President Boyd, for your presentation. I'm going to go ahead and ask the representative for the LGIs, Dr. Brian Nolan, if he will make his way up. What we'll do is I'm going to let Dr. Nolan give his presentation, and then we'll open it up for questions for both the University of Tennessee and the LGI. So you all just stay seated right there, and if you would. And Dr. Nolan, welcome. If you would just introduce yourself. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Brian Nolan, president of East Tennessee State University, but I'm here today representing the locally governed institutions. So as I move through the presentation material today, I'm going to provide an overview of the impact that those institutions have on the state. And I'm joined by many of the presidents from those institutions. Dr. Licari, Dr. Tucker, Dr. McPhee, and Dr. Oldham are joining me here.
Dr. Nolan, let me stop you right there and ask you for all those gentlemen to please stand. I see them all here. Would you all please stand so we can welcome each and every one of you all? Welcome. Thank you.
The person who lives the farthest away drew the shortest straw. But I want to start by reiterating the comments of many of my colleagues and outlining the landscape that we operate in the state of Tennessee. There's been made reference to the Drive for 55, the Complete College Tennessee Act, but the policy framework that defines the operations for our public post-secondary institutions is the best in the country. And states from across the nation look to our policy framework, and that's emulated and replicated with frequency, particularly as it relates to the work that we've done in Tennessee Promise, Reconnect, and the work around the funding formula. That funding formula, as many of you are aware, changed about a decade and a half ago. In 2011, the predominance of funds received by the state institutions were predicated on enrollment. Through Drive to 55 and Complete College Tennessee, that changed to a focus on outcomes, and those outcomes have been driven by increased retention and graduation rates across every single one of your institutions. But here are the metrics upon which we're assessed every year. These are the elements that comprise the funding formula. And then outcomes across the funding formula are distributed by THEC to those institutions who gained in performance areas across these metrics. I would note that the funding formula is undergoing a review at this moment. There's been some reference today to on-time completion. I know that's one of the central policy questions that is being discussed as we look at potential changes to the formula. Here's the recommendations that emerged through that metric this year. You can see across every single one of the locally governed institutions, their outcomes are down because the outcomes for another public institution in the state is up at a more significant clip. So funds are going from our 6 institutions to other institutions predicated on their outcomes as generated by the formula. Here's the projects that were recommended by THEC for capital. Capital changed this past year. Prior years, THEC would score projects in rank. This year, projects were provided in a block to the governor's office, and the governor's office then selected from those projects. The bulk of the items on this list were not funded. And to reiterate comments from my colleagues, these would be items, as the chancellor noted, if you had an interest, I'm sure one of the presidents behind me would be happy to address a question about those projects that were not funded. And here are the projects that were on the list by Governor Lee. President Boyd mentioned the investment in the Health Sciences Center at UT. But the 2 projects from the LGIs are $19.2 million for an infrastructure project at East Tennessee State University, and then in addition to the Fogelman College of Business at the University of Memphis, and then underneath are the deferred maintenance projects. I would note for the project at East Tennessee State University, that is not a new capital build. That is in many respects proactive deferred maintenance or replacements of steam lines, water lines, electrical, and a boiler to address capital needs moving forward. All of those elements below could be magnified 2 to 3-fold if we really wanted to move the needle on deferred maintenance across the system. Dr. Gentile talked about the lottery scholarships. As someone who in a different life, when my hair was dark, knew a fair bit about the lottery scholarship. It was projected to remain balanced every year. You can see on this chart that balance comes to a close in the near future. The costs for the program have grown because, as Dr. Gentile noted, elements have been added to the funding portfolio. But what should be important for you to remember is the impact that the lottery and other programs have on affordability in our state. 97% of all students enrolled in a public university receive some form of financial aid, and that average aid package is $10,000. So if you were to take an institution such as Middle Tennessee State University, for example, where their tuition and fees are right around $10,000, if you qualify for the lottery scholarship, which is a 3.0 or 21 on the ACT, which more than 65% of all Tennesseans achieve, your out-of-pocket expenses is $5,500. So I cannot understate the importance that the lottery program has had on affordability for families across our state. And that focus on affordability undergirds what has been a historic focus in our state on access opportunities. As we look at access opportunities, many of you have heard about the demographic cliff. We in higher education have talked about it for the better part of a decade. But I would like to highlight that the demographic cliff in Tennessee looks very different than in our states to the north and the Midwest. In fact, we're projected to grow in the number of high school graduates. So as you look at demographic and population shifts, that means we are ground central for recruiting from those states that are undergoing losses in their number of high school graduates. Dr. Gentile talked a lot about the college going rate in his presentation, but I would note that the college going rate is not consistent across the state of Tennessee. In many of your rural counties, less than half of the students go on to college the following fall, and that's 2-year, 4-year public-private TCAT. That's anything beyond high school. One of the things we're focusing on in our section of the state, rural Northeast Tennessee, is college going rates of men who are now below 50%. So irrespective of county, less than half of the young men in the great state of Tennessee move on to post-secondary education after high school. That's another reason why we need to keep those investments in the lottery-funded programs front and center. Here's enrollment in your public university system this year. About half of the institutions are up, about half are down somewhat. For those that are up, some such as East Tennessee State University recognized the largest freshman class in the history of that institution. Retention rates have moved positively since the impact and implementation of the outcomes formula, as have graduation rates. I draw special attention to the graduation rates for Pell students. Almost 50% of the Pell eligible students in this state graduate within the defined time period, which is right near the national average. Within the LGIs, we produce about 20,000 graduates, almost 13,000 of which are baccalaureates. We're the entity that produces your teachers, your nurses. We're the backbone of this state's economy, and we're deeply appreciative of the support that you've provided that makes those outcomes possible. In summary, here's who we are as a system. About 82,000 students. We have an $8 billion annual economic impact, and I want to reiterate the point that Dr. Gentile made on the 10-to-1 impact for every state dollar invested. We are also research institutions. The University of Memphis is an R1. The bulk of the other LGIs are R2. Some are right on the border of R2 to R1, and that will evolve over the course of the next couple of years. But if there's anything on behalf of my presidential colleagues that I could request of you today, it's predictability. Predictability in the process for operating budgets and funding, recognizing that when you provide salary enhancements, only about 55% of that enhancement is funded by the state. We have to cover the other half. President Boyd referenced the elements for the non-formula units that were not funded. I would request consideration also for Tennessee State University and East Tennessee State University, who have non-formula entities for which their salaries were not fully funded. And then on the capital side, once again, the request for predictability. Every year that I've been president, the process through which capital is funded has ebbed and flowed a little bit. In many respects, now it is a very political process. I'd welcome the chance to return to scoring and priorities, but I think that's another conversation for another day. But a conversation that is front and center is the focus on deferred maintenance, campus safety, and campus security. Mr. Chair, on behalf of these institutions, I'm honored to present this information and would be happy to take questions along with my colleagues, both to my left as well as behind me.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. And we do have several folks on the list for questions for both the LGIs as well as University of Tennessee. So let's begin with Chairman Faison. Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see you, Dr. Nolan. Go Bucks. I've had two children, well, one graduated last year and one graduating this year, and we're thankful for what y'all do. On the LGIs, Doc, can you kind of talk to us about that major winter storm that happened? How many of our LGIs were impacted by the storm? Did we have dorms? Did we have classrooms that were shut down because of power outages? Can you just kind of walk us through, were we prepared for that at all? And how big did it affect us?
I think if you look across the 6 LGIs, we were fortunate in that most were able to avoid the significant impact from the storm. I think our colleagues here in Nashville had the most major implications on their institutions and their campuses as a result of the storm. In Northeast Tennessee, it was pretty much just snow. But I would have to defer to my colleagues here who could talk at length about loss of power or infrastructure challenges that emerge from the storm.
You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it would be interesting for the committee to hear if there were power issues and sustained power outages. Mr. Chair, are you all right with hearing what the local LGIs dealt with when it comes to the power during the ice storms?
That's fine. I don't know if they all want to come up. That may be a little hard to do, but if there's any particular that lost some outages and something they would like to bring up, we could certainly hear from them. All right, moving right along.
I thought I was going to give up this seat for a second.
Yeah, there you go. Chairman Faison, you good? All right, let's move right on to Chairman Boyd. Chairman Boyd, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Nolan, great to see you today. The question I have is about the Enterprise Resource Planning System. So back in 2023, the General Assembly appropriated about $170 million to replace the current systems in place. And so I was just curious, how's that going? Are all the LGIs on that now? Are they operational? And have you seen any improvements since then?
So first, I'd like to thank the General Assembly for the investment that they made in the ERP system. We transitioned from a long-standing platform that was Ellucian-based, the Banner system, to an Oracle-based cloud interface. A number of your LGIs have gone live. We at East Tennessee State University went live in July. I know that Tennessee Tech has gone live, and other institutions are in the sequencing process. We went live on business, finance, and HR. Pleased to report that the system is working, it's operable. The elements that are critical, payroll, et cetera, are moving without incident. Anytime you move away from an ERP system that was in place for more than 2 decades to a new one, there are always some bumps in the road. We continue to work through elements related to time, labor, distribution of time and labor from a pay perspective. But at our institution, we're making significant progress, and I'm pleased with where we are. And I've not received concerns from the other institutions that have gone live. We are now, the next phase will be to look at what happens on the student side of the equation. And I know my colleagues at the University of Tennessee system, and I want to thank them for their leadership in this area. They really blazed the trail. They were the first institution to go live. And we'll turn to President Boyd, who can talk about the experience across that system.
Yeah, so we launched our what we call Dash in January of 2025. We can't say that it was without hiccups, but we've got a really dedicated team that have powered through. We're in a really good position now. I'd like to give a shout out to the gentleman to my left, our CFO, David Miller, who has been not only leading the way within our campuses, our whole system launched the same system, or this Dash system at the same time, but also for his being a good partner with all of our LGIs. I know that you guys talk every week. And so the collaboration, something you may not see from where you sit, but the collaboration within the LGIs and UT on so many things, in particular on this ERP system, has been really, really good.
Chairman Boyd, thank you. And I want to say this, I think each time I see David, he always keeps me up to speed on what's going on with that. So I want to say thank you, as well as Dr. Nolan as well. And David, I know you've got something to say about this whole process.
Just to recognize, University of Memphis also went live January 1st and is having a really good start.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, Representative Reeves, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Got a question for Dr. Nolan about the public-private partnerships. And my understanding is that the UT system was the first to utilize those for higher education construction in Tennessee. And they started with dorms, but maybe looking at some other areas like childcare facilities, hotels, entertainment, et cetera. Can you describe any other P3 projects in the future?
I think as you look at the landscape of P3 partnerships, they've historically been focused, as you referenced, in housing and residence life. Bring units on board quicker and with a very different price structure than if we were to do that internally. At East Tennessee State University, we're not exploring any P3s at this moment. I know that many of my colleagues, I think Austin Peay is exploring a P3 as it relates to residence halls, but that is not something we're exploring at our university. We're looking in a slightly different direction. We have 2 buildings that at one point were classroom and administrative. We're going to transition those 2 residence halls. It allows us to bring a couple hundred beds up and out to market in a much quicker time period at about a third of the cost. So we're going to take 2 old buildings at $9 million a pop, turn those back into residence halls. So that's the path we'll explore. But if Austin Peay or others would like to address the P3 elements on their campuses, I'm happy to defer to my fellow colleagues.
Well, I appreciate that. And I'm just trying to get a general sense. And do you have a sense of whether it's an easier process to request and receive funding for those projects compared to state funding?
But one point to note is that the predominance of areas in which we are utilizing P3s are for auxiliary projects. I'm not aware of any university in the state that is looking at a P3 for instructional purposes. And on auxiliary projects, when we build a residence hall on one of our campuses, that is non-state funding. So those are self-funded projects. So where the P3 comes into play is that debt associated element is shared or on the backs of the developer rather than on the back of the institution.
Okay, thank you. And with the chairman's indulgence, I'll just note for Dr. Boyd, the UT Health Science Center, my wife is a former research scientist, and I know what a big deal it is to receive R1 designation down there. And I think it happened last year.
Yes, it did.
And just wanted to say great job and look forward to seeing what that'll produce.
Great. Thank you so much.
And President Boyd, if you would kind of talk about UT, I know the UT system, of course, was the first to utilize the P3 model for higher ed. So would you please talk about, kind of give us a status there?
Yeah, I'll tee it up and then turn it over to the expert who led the project, which is David Miller. But I'll just say that the P3s aren't for everybody. We were doing it at UT Knoxville. We're not doing it at the other campuses yet. A big part of being able to do a P3 is dependent on the developer's ability to get credit at a reasonable rate to do the project. And they base that credit based on risk. So at the University of Tennessee Knoxville, building residence halls, they look at the demand for the housing. So at UT Knoxville, we had 8,200 beds. We had 42,000 students. We're oversubscribed every year for beds. Each year we have 70,000 students applying for 7,000 spots. So the creditors, the bond issuers are looking at that, thinking this is a pretty safe bet that they're going to be able to fill these beds. And so they're able to get a pretty good rate on their bonds. That's not always the case. And in our state, having AAA rated bonds, sometimes we can go out and bond it ourselves at a better rate. So we have to weigh those two things: what the P3, the developer, is able to borrow at relative to what we're able to borrow. So P3 doesn't always work for everybody, but it did work for UT Knoxville. The P3, roughly actually, David can correct me if I'm wrong, but I hope he does it in public. But I'll say that I think it was roughly about a $420 million for 2 projects. I will say that the developer put the money in. We provide the land. They invested the money. On year 1, it's positive cash flow for us managing the facility. After 30 years or 40? 40. After 40 years, the buildings revert back to us. So in that particular case, it was a tremendous deal for us. And it gave us a lot of brand new housing. And I also say they turned it around in record time from start to finish in less than 2 years on both facilities.
Mm-hmm. Just to add, in addition to everything that President Boyd said, which was accurate.
Thank you.
We are looking at a new opportunity for academic research facilities to be a P3. And the reason is we don't want to occupy the whole facility. We don't want to take on the risk of a whole building. We want other partners from the private sector or other research entities such as UT Medical Center, but particularly private companies that we can do technology transfer with. So if we want to occupy a minority of the project through leasing, we would rather that be on the risk of the developer. So you may see some of those coming through soon.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, I have Chairman Williams. Chairman Williams, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Hicks. I have a question. I'm not sure Dr. Nolan can answer, but regarding nuclear, the legislature has spent an inordinate amount of money on nuclear over the last 3 years because of the need to find other resources and revenues as it relates to that. But before I get to that, and I may have to, is in regards to Tennessee Tech's $3 million recurring this year. If you don't know the answer, I may call on Dr. Oldham in the back. I see him. But what I wanted to ask first was about the non-formulary units. This seems to be a discussion that we're having more often than not. How can we better prepare for the challenges associated with those who are not in the funding the outcomes-based formulary? Is that a change that THEC has to make as it relates to that formulary and how that happens? Or because if we have several institutions, both UT and LGIs, that are evidently not getting the full funding that they're needing based upon those. I'm wondering if, am I missing something there, or are they just not included in the outcome?
If I could take a crack at that question. So for the 6-7 years I've been in this role, we've been trying to get some type of formula for the specialized units. Last year, I think we agreed on one. This year it wasn't followed, and we're not actually sure why. So we're still trying to understand that. So you're 100% right. We need a formula so it's not constantly coming and having to beg every 2 or 3 years for like what we're doing today.
Right.
And I think to follow on President Boyd's comments, we've both referenced the salary portion that was underfunded. So for East Tennessee State University, that number is right at $660,000 that wasn't fully funded. But they also did not fully fund the operating portion. So that's about $300,000 for us. I'd like to reiterate the comments that President Boyd made about the need for some stability in funding around non-formula units. For us, that is all of our health sciences enterprise. That's the College of Medicine, Family Medicine, and the College of Pharmacy. The College of Pharmacy for us is only partially funded. A number of years ago, we made a request to fully fund pharmacy so we could reduce tuition to a level equivalent to UT. We received about half of those funds, so there's a $3 million request that would allow pharmacy to be fully funded as well. So non-formula has been somewhat of a confusing policy landscape for a number of years, and we'd welcome some stability in that space.
But what's the impetus, or how would we do that? You know, when we first started looking at the outcomes-based formula, we and many of you, I know Dr. Oldham was involved prior to his here, and us trying to figure out how to go from the population of students model to outcomes model, and when we made that revision. I'm just wondering how, and sometimes it's because we're adding a new campus, and sometimes there are other things that interject or compete with those dollars. I guess how is the best way to do it? I guess if we were going to finally get a fix and say we're not having folks coming and asking us for multiple line items as it relates to remedying those.
Representative Williams, many states on an element such as a College of Medicine will look to base plus funding. The elements of the outcomes formula are difficult to apply for a College of Medicine because there's not the 30, 60 to 90 to 120 credit hour thresholds. We'll accept 100 students at the Quillen College of Medicine in the fall. 99 of them will graduate 4 years later. So our graduation and retention rates for places like medicine and pharmacy are plus 90% by a given fact. There are clinical aspects associated with those operations as well, because our doctors are in the clinics to provide training opportunities for students. You're funding residencies. So it's not as easy to develop a funding model for health units as it is for an undergraduate population.
I'm going to defer to Dr. Gentile, but I'll also mention extension. Both TSU and UT has extension offices, and there's no funding formula for retention because there's just no students there.
Dr. Gentile, you're recognized, sir.
And Stephen Gentile, Executive Director of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. I think the question was asked, is this a THEC thing or what have you? I've always found the quote, non-formula is a bit of a misnomer. There are formulas for all units, and we did work with UTSU and UT last year in coordination with FNA, Department of Finance and Administration, on identifying what is a reasonable approach to requesting funds for the formula for those units. And we used that same formula this past year. I think what we're running into is that not everything that we request gets funded. Like the outcomes funding formula, it doesn't necessarily get fully funded. With the medical units, the formula just wasn't funded specifically this year. So there is a formula. It's just a question of whether or not it gets funded from one year to the next.
Okay. Is there a way to, is there, I guess my question is that, so with the formula, we're not funding every component of the formula? Or is it in the formula or is it not in the formula?
The medical units are not in the outcomes-based funding formula. Okay. There's a separate formula for the medical units.
Okay.
And so there was a formula and there was a recommendation and it was not funded.
Okay.
Cameron Williams, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you. Dr. Oldham, thanks for coming up. I just had a quick question about $3 million. I know last year, I think the governor, out of his nuclear fund, gave $1 million to tech. This $3 million, it looks like it's for nuclear and cybersecurity academies. I guess you could you tell me what's the purpose here? What's the goal for those monies?
Yeah, thank you for that. The
Dr. Oldham, for the record, you
yeah,
just
Phil Oldham.
introduced.
Yeah, Phil Oldham, President, Tennessee Tech University. These are emerging and rapidly expanding programs and of great state need, obviously. Nuclear engineering, we started last year. We've already exceeded enrollment goals beyond, I think, year 5 of expectations. I think we got about 50 students enrolled in the program already. Computer science as a group has been one of the top 2 undergraduate majors on campus for a number of years. But that area is beginning to change. We're seeing a shift a little bit in that whole area of interest among students. More students are wanting very specific degree programs within that cadre, not just generalized computer science. And so things like artificial intelligence, we're launching the first artificial intelligence major on a public university campus this next fall. Cybersecurity has been a big strength of Tennessee Tech for a number of years now. So if you take this as a whole, this, I think $3 million in the governor's proposed budget for nuclear and for cyber in general is to help support the continued growth and emergence of all those academic opportunities. And we continue to push on them pretty hard. These are areas that most campuses struggle with a little bit as you see rapidly emerging opportunities of state need to be able to respond promptly at the right time is very important. And so, a one-time funding request like this is extremely helpful in that regard.
So, Chairman, just wanted to follow up to that. The interesting part about it we've talked about different things at Martin last year, ETSU, pharmacy. Now with this, there's $3 million non-recurring, which means we're not adding any positions. I guess my concern, I guess we're tweaking the delivery or the certificate, because it looks as if with these monies, we're not adding new personnel. We're just adding something academically or a certificate that somebody could, or a degree that they could deliver.
Yeah, I think the best way to look at this is like startup costs, new business type startup costs. So it's equipment, in some cases, temporary salary support until these programs begin to cash flow a little more consistently. As you're in a rapid growth phase initially. And so it's to help defer some of those startup costs.
Okay, thank you. That's it, Chairman.
Thank you. Next on the list, Representative Shaw. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. President Boyd, you mentioned early in your presentation about maybe a $3 million request for research for farming.
Yes, sir.
Since the Buc-ee's deal might not work out for me, and for the farmers that are watching, I'd like you to talk a little bit about what that research is all about going forward, because we know that ag is a department that touches the lives of people every day. So can you talk a little bit about what that is going to entail?
Okay, so and specifically, it'll entail research around technologies that will help farmers be more efficient so they can get more productivity out of their land. Here's an example. They had an article recently, and I think it was the New York Times, that was talking about some technology in which rather than spraying insecticide or pesticide across the entire field using a crop duster, which we do in West Tennessee a lot. You don't really need to do the entire field. You could go to using special technology. You can identify exactly the right spots where you needed to apply it. And then using drones, you could apply the pesticide or insecticide in exactly the right spot. So a much more efficient way of applying those than just blanket spreading. So that's that kind of technology, that kind of research that we're wanting to apply to agriculture and help our farmers.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you. I have no one else on the list for, yes, I do. I have Chairman Grills on the list. Chairman Grills, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate Representative Shaw bringing up that question. But it's a technology called See and Spray. It's really amazing, and what you're talking about is exactly right, and how important it is for farmers to be able to minimize the amount of herbicides they use and pesticides they use. And that's what every farmer wants to save dollar. I promise you that. But my question is, what criteria are you using to evaluate whether a degree program justifies the cost and delivers an adequate return to the student and for the students? Do you have a metrics by which you evaluate that annually, or?
I will say that one of the things that THAC does is review all of our degree programs and make sure that we're producing a significant number of degrees to justify the program. That's something that's reviewed at the state level, and then also with the campus. And we also have something that a different funding model that forces our campuses to make sure that each of the programs are producing a return for the university.
I know President Trump, and he's got an initiative out like that. I'm understanding you guys are working within that, trying to make sure. And I know these are conversations we'll have forward, but I just want to make sure that kids that go off to get a degree, that they're in a better position after they graduate than they were before they went in.
Yeah, on average, our students graduate and make $1.5 million more in their lifetime than if they hadn't got a degree. Okay. So on average, that's true. And it depends on the degree, of course, but nuclear engineering, some of our business majors are going to make a lot more than maybe somebody in social work. But one of the things I'm also really mindful of, that there are some degrees that may not return the best return on investment, like being an elementary school teacher, but we desperately need them. So it's not just about the return on investment. Sometimes it's about the social impact as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, President.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chairman. Members, I have no one else on the list. So I do want to thank our presenters, President Randy Boyd. Thank you for being here. Dr. Brian Nolan from ETSU. Thank you. Also, Mr. Dwayne Tucker back there from TSU. Thank you. Dr. Michael LeCarey over from Austin Peay. Thank you for being here. Also, Dr. Phil Oldham from Tennessee Tech. Thank you again for being here. Also, on behalf of the University of Memphis, Mr. Ken Moody back there. Thank you for being here as well. And then Dr. Sidney McPhee back there. Thank you all for attending this morning. Thank you all. All right, we will move right along to the Department of Correction. All right, Commissioner Estrada, thank you for being here. And we're running a little bit early, so thank you for being able to adjust your schedule and for being here. Without further ado, just to remind members that all the presentations are on the dashboard, and we're having a little bit of technical difficulties with the microphones today. So when you're ready to speak, instead of us actually handling them, you would just push your button by yourself. So if you would, Commissioner Estrada, if you would begin with the introductions, let us know who you are and who you have with you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Frank Strada, Commissioner, Tennessee Department of Corrections. I'll have my staff introduce themselves, starting with Landon.
Landon Kinderdine, Deputy Director of Budget.
Valerie Murtha, Assistant Commissioner of Finance.
Elizabeth Foy, Chief of Staff.
Heather Stanford, Assistant Commissioner, Human Resources and Staff Development.
Linda Thomas, Assistant Commissioner of Prison Operations.
Thank you. And I have other members of my staff in the audience to answer any questions later. So again, thanks for having us, Chairman, and thanks for giving us an opportunity to present our budget. to you all today, and I'd like to begin with one of the most urgent and evolving security challenges that TDOC faces today. It's the growing threat posed by contraband introduction, often by drones, into our facilities. Across the country and here in Tennessee, drones are being used to transport drugs, weapons, and cell phones directly into prisons. These devices are inexpensive, easy to move, and capable of bypassing traditional perimeter security. The impact is immediate and serious, and contraband fuels violence, gang activities, and overdose incidents inside of our facilities, creating a risk for both staff and inmates. The presence of illicit cell phones, particularly dangerous, these devices allow inmates to communicate in unmonitored and non-secure ways. In many cases, they are used to coordinate criminal activity, intimidate witnesses, and attempt to manipulate their own family members. Families are pressured for money through threats of fear, creating new victims outside the prison walls. This is not simply an institutional issue, it's a public safety issue that reaches directly into Tennessee communities. To address this evolving threat, TDOC has included $1.7 million in our fiscal year budget request to expand drone detection technology. This funding will allow us to deploy advanced systems capable of identifying, tracking, and helping interdict unauthorized drone activity near our institutions. This project has evolved and expanded over the past year as we have developed and more directly understood the technology capabilities. We are developing a correctional safety intelligence center. In addition to our drone detection request, this initiative is being funded by shifting resources from long vacant positions that have historically been difficult to fill. Rather than leaving these positions unutilized, we are reinvesting those funds into a centralized intelligence structure that strengthens statewide security operations. The CSISC will house dedicated drone operators, intelligent personnel, and will allow for real-time monitoring, coordination, and analysis across all TDO facilities, incorporating through AI overlay the over 6,500 cameras that are currently surveil our facilities. More importantly, it will create a unified platform for agency-wide collaboration to combat organized criminal activity that operates across the institution and geographical boundaries. By centralized intelligence, we enhance our ability to identify patterns, disrupt contraband networks, and coordinate with state and federal law enforcement partners to address a broader statewide organized crime threat. Security will also require accountability and transparency. That's why I want to highlight our relationship with the Inmate Oversight Board. Over time, our relationship has evolved into a stronger and more transparent partnership. Importantly, IDOB members have reviewed and observed specific processes inside of our Tennessee Offender Management System related to sentence credit removals. In 2025 alone, TDOC disciplinary process has recommended the removal of more than 1.5 million sentence credits due to disciplinary violations. The volume of credit days to be removed reflects both active enforcement and clear message that misconduct has consequences. TDOC is currently responsible for more than 20,000 inmates housed in TDOC-operated and private facilities. In addition, slightly over 5,000 state inmates are locally housed in county jails. And managing this population requires constant coordination, careful planning, movement planning, and close partnership with local jurisdictions. Our movement of the appropriate inmates from local jails into TDOC facilities has slowed in part because of our participation in the Memphis Safer Streets initiative. At the request of Governor Lee and President Trump, TDOC has partnered in this effort to address violent crime in Memphis, including housing approximately 300 pretrial detainees to assist Shelby County with capacity challenges. While this partnership supports broader safety objectives, it requires operational adjustments and intake and transfer patterns. Even so, we remain committed to managing capacity responsibility while supporting statewide public safety. And one of the most encouraging developments over the past several years is our progress in staffing. Not long ago, we had about 800 correctional officer vacancies statewide. Today, that number is approximately 450. While we're not where we want to be, this represents a substantial improvement and reflects focused recruitment strategies, retention incentives, improved training, and strong leadership. Our mission is ultimately about public safety. Every improvement in institutional security, even reduction of vacancies and overtime credit days removed for misconduct, and every educational milestone achieved contributes to a safer facilities and a safer Tennessee. We thank you for your support, and we're available for any questions you may have.
All right, Commissioner, thank you very much. And I have several folks on the list up here, and I'll kick us off with some questioning. According to documents found in Edison, the current maximum liability for TDOC's medical health contract is over $1 billion. And the behavioral health contract maximum liability is over $174 million. Based on that, several questions here. So last year, after we passed the fiscal year 26 budget, the current year budget, TDOC transferred over $37 million in recurring funds within their base budget to cover contracts providing inmate medical, behavioral, and temporary nursing services. $20 million of that recurring funding was transferred from the state prosecution's account, which is used to reimburse local jails for housing state inmates. Why was that transfer needed?
Hi there, Landon Kinderdine, Deputy Director of Budget. When we were looking at the cost increases that we needed in fiscal year 26, we were asked to look internally to reallocate some funding that were in certain business units. We traditionally had a fairly decent reversion, and this was a way to capture current funding in order to facilitate that contract. That contract was going to have a substantial increase with the renewal of it. So the state prosecutions fund that was used there, it was at that time showing a surplus of funds. So that's why we captured that and moved it over.
Okay, so going a little bit further, so prior to the $20 million transfer, the base budget for state prosecutions, my numbers show here $173.7 million, which now leaves, after the transfer, $153 million. TDOC reported spending $140 million fiscal year 25 for local jail reimbursements from this particular account. Again, that's a $10 million increase in expenditures from the previous year. So are you confident that you still have enough funding to provide reimbursements moving forward?
So included with our budget request for fiscal year 27, we did include a line item for state prosecutions account. With our latest population projection, it was showing that account would be short about 500 inmates that we were needing to be funded. So it was included as a request, but it wasn't recommended.
Okay. So, restate that again to make sure I follow you right there. You've lost me a little bit in the weeds.
So we did include with our request to the governor funding for the state prosecution account, which we pay the local jails out of.
Okay.
And that was based off of the updated population projection that we received in the summer of this past year.
Okay, so that was an additional 13 million, is that correct? So if you had received that 13 million, you were going to raise rates, reimbursement rates?
No, sir, that was just to fund the expected increase in that population in the local jails. And then also there was a increase to the evidence-based programming stipend that the local jails can apply for. They can get up to $6 more per day for tier 1 and $12 for tier 2. We were requesting about $3.5 million to cover those increased costs as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Chairman Williams, you're recognized.
Thank you. Several questions. I'll start with the drone detection. $27 million. And I guess I'm kind of getting a little bit lost here. How does your department, I guess, first determine whether or not to use excess revenues that would be reverted to spend on things? So, for instance, we didn't spend it on what Chairman Hicks just talked about, but we are using $27 million of what would have been reversions to issue a PO or a contract for someone to do drone detection. Is that correct?
No, the 27 million was an estimated maximum liability for the contract. It's actually 20 million over 5 years, but we would only be spending 5 million per year. So we wouldn't be using like 27 million. We could have reverted it. It would just be $5 million of operating funds.
Okay, so for the $5 million that you're paying this year, wasn't in the budget last year, correct?
Correct.
So where did you get the $5 million to sign that contract?
Well, we're always trying to save money wherever we can. So we may have had other contracts that came in less, other ways that we had less expenses, whether it be travel or different vendors where we had 5 million that we had available to spend on that.
Okay, so, but included also in the governor's budget is a little over $1.7 million recurring revenue. So is is that in addition to the 5 million over the next 5?
Are you okay? No, I think it's getting confusing. The 1.7 million was
Agreed.
just, yeah, the 1.7 million that we requested was just for the drone detection. The overall plan that the commissioner has for the CSIC center is going to be a total of 5 million per year. And that includes all of the other things he mentioned, the staffing, the AI cameras, the other portion of it. And so that 1.7 million would cover part of the 5 million.
Does that 1.7 million pay for retasking positions at TDOC, or is the $1.7 million going to the drone company?
The 1.7 million is solely for drone detection. We would never ask for operating money to cover salaries.
The contract that I think it was with a group called Axon, maybe, it says it's for 2 years. So how are we spending money over 5 years when the contract's for 2, and we're asking for reoccurring revenue for something that we're not going to have 2 years from now?
I believe that was because it was through a NASPO contract. And so the NASPO contract currently may only be for 2 years, so we can only do a 2-year contract. If NASPO were to not renew it for the remaining years, then the rest of that contract we would not be liable for.
And you wouldn't need the $1.7 million recurring.
Well, I would assume we would still want the drone program, so we would instead look for whatever company we could get to do it.
Would that company be able to use the capital improvements that you're installing over the next 5 years?
I can't speak to that. I mean, that's
Or
some
would
what
we be
ifs.
starting over, I guess is what I'm saying.
I don't believe we'd be starting over.
No, and it's actually two companies. It's not just Axon, it's Axon and Skydio. One company is doing the AI over the cameras. That's Axon, and Skydio is the drone company.
Okay. Well, moving on, it's just a little confusing because we have so many vacant positions. We're reverting an inordinate amount of money every year in order to do that. We have a bonus pool that we're trying to pay to get people to do this. I think it seems like a lot of challenge associated with not a lot of clear direction, particularly when you're spending non-recurring and recurring revenue in such short periods of time that we're not sure what the end looks like before the beginning. Typically, what we would see is instead of a recurring investment, it'd be a non-recurring investment since the contract is so short. Moving on, I think it's 41 TCA 41-1-408, there's a prohibition against administering hormone therapy in the state for those who are incarcerated in our jails and prisons. It's been come to my attention that possibly that we're still doing that. Could someone speak to whether or not we're providing gender reaffirming care to those incarcerated in our prisons, or no?
Assistant Commissioner Jillian Bresnahan over Clinical Services. We are not providing hormone therapy for gender reassignment for new intakes. The patients who are already on those medications before that bill was passed are remaining on them, but no new patients.
Approximately how many people are the citizens of Tennessee paying to remain on gender affirming care in our prisons?
I don't have that total with me, but I can get that.
Okay, thank you.
I would request somebody be trying to shuffle that to find that out, like pronto. Next on the list, Speaker Zachary, I think he has stepped out. So let's go to Chairman Hulsey. Chairman Hulsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for being here. Commissioner, you and I met about a week and a half ago and discussed about some things that were concerns to me, and you gave me some answers on some things. I wanted to ask you about 4 questions. According to the questionnaire you filled out, you stated that in 25 used approximately $5 million in vacant positions equity to offset additional costs. A couple questions that relate to that. What exactly was this $5 million used for? And the second question is, TDOC used $27 million in salary equity, and the chairman might have touched on this, from vacant positions to fund a 2-year surveillance contract. As of 25, or as of November 25, TDOC had $46 million in salary equity from vacant positions. What other initiatives are you wanting to use that salary equity for?
Our main mission for this year was the drone process. That's where we wanted to invest our money. We understand our shortfalls in some of our staffing challenges. This process will give us the ability to live monitor 6,500 cameras. You just don't have the staff to do that. AI will help us live monitor our cameras and observe things that we just don't have the resources, the staff resources to do. So the investment was going to be into the drone and AI program to assist us with looking at our cameras and strengthening our gang intelligence and flying drones over our facilities to make sure that we can see any abnormal activity that may be occurring in our facilities, whether they're groupings, people by the fence lines, et cetera, give us a quicker response. It's a more proactive initiative than being reactive and responding after the fact. So it gives us additional eyes and ears, and that's where we were putting the investment and why we were putting the investment.
Okay, thank you. You and I talked about sentencing credits, and for the record, you had mentioned it too in your introduction. I've heard that the oversight board, the sentencing credit oversight board, can't get all the TOMAS information that they request from you. Is that wrong information, or do they have access to everything they need?
Chairman, I know that every TOMA screen that they have asked for, we have given them. We've had some discussion. I know they wanted some access to health records, which we haven't given. Here's the thing on TOMAS. All of our staff don't have access to every TOMAS screen. So we were looking at the things that had to deal strictly with discipline and credits. And so we've given them, I think, 10 screens that they asked for. And within those screens, there's additional screens that go with them. And I have the list of the screens we've provided, and I can always provide those to the committee if you'd like.
Okay, I'd like to have that if I could when you get it. I'm told that they don't have the documentation where they recommend taking sentencing credits that it's documented that it actually is removed. Now, your liaison sent me some information yesterday, but it's beyond me and my ability to interpret everything that's on that sheet. But the question is there proof, documented proof that your organization has indeed taken away the sentencing credits that this board recommended?
Yes, that document we sent to your office shows the monthly report that we send over about the credits that we're taking from the inmates that they've recommended. And that's provided to the IDOB every month. That document was created so we can have the verification that we are taking the credits. They've also assisted us. The IDOB has also assisted us and have come over to our facility, over to our headquarters, and assisted us with taking credits from the inmates as well in our office. So that is occurring. That document that I gave you is a true and accurate document.
Okay, thank you. There's for decades, TDOC contracted with an independent projection consultant company that's reputable, dealing with inmate population projections. That hasn't come out in abstract or the year report for quite some time. Are you still using an independent company to do those kinds of inmate projections? And the reason is, of course, how can we accurately look at funding and money when we don't even have an estimate of how many inmates you think you're going to have next year?
Yes, Representative Halsey, we are still using that company, and I know that we have our reports on our website. We've just streamlined some of our reports and placed them on the website instead of paper, but I could always provide those documents to you or to the committee if you'd like.
Well, I must have missed it someplace because I couldn't find it at all. Yeah, I'll be glad to get that. One more comment with record-breaking violence, and you've had your hands full across the board. Wouldn't want to do what you do, by the way. But with the record-breaking violence, I really don't think it's going to matter how much pay you pay staff if their safety's in jeopardy every day they go to work. And, you know, the morale that comes from that too. I don't know, maybe we ought to return to do a performance-based budgeting. I'm not sure, but we got to get a handle on the violence end of this thing for everybody's sake, the public and the inmates and the staff too. I hope you're working on a way to curb it.
If I can comment, the drone AI operation is one of those things that will curb that. One of the advantages of this system is it'll allow us to identify geofencing in certain areas that are vulnerable, like staff offices, blind spots, ingress, egress areas, and it can set up a reaction for when we have inmates in those areas that we'll be able to then get an immediate alert and be able to have a reaction team go to those areas. So I think that this system that I want to put in place will reduce the violence inside of our prisons.
Chairman Halsey. Thank you. Next on the list, Representative Parkinson. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for what you do, and thank you for being here. Who is there a provider that underwrites the medical portion of the services that you guys provide to the inmates? Feel free to jump in here.
I'm not sure what you mean by that underwrites it.
Right. Such as an example, you know, we have TennCare that provides the services for, you know, babies and elder and those. Who is it that does it for the inmates?
The inmates don't have insurance. We don't have any underwriter for them.
And how can I continue, Mr. Chair? Okay,
You're recognized. Go right ahead.
How do we pay for the medical services that are provided by for the inmates?
Out of the medical contract that we have.
Okay, and so those medical contracts, and are there multiple providers or vendors rather that provide the medical care and medicines and surgeries and things of that nature?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so our primary healthcare provider is Centurion. They're contracted out, and then they have contracts from other hospitals and doctors, et cetera, that provide specific services for the offender population, as well as a contract with our pharmacy. So it's all contracted out.
Okay. And along those lines, what is the percentage of the budget that goes to pay for that?
It would be roughly 10% of our budget.
Okay. Thank you for that. And it's okay for me to continue. I just have a few more questions.
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay. And in regards to Shelby County and the housing of state inmates, it's been stated that the state has not made a payment in about a year in regards to Shelby County housing those inmates. Can you clarify that for us?
Yes, I can clarify that. I believe there was a mischaracterization from the mayor up there. We've had a number of meetings with the mayor concerning the inmates up there. Shelby County has refused to sign the contract for the inmates, so therefore they get the $41 a day. They've reduced their amount that they wanted because they failed to sign the contract. We had a personal meeting with the mayor and his staff. We've had correspondence back and forth with the mayor and his staff, and they have refused to sign the the agreement. So I think that question is better directed towards the mayor in Memphis than TDOC, because we've done our part and they have not even billed us. So we can't reimburse them if they haven't even billed us.
Right. Is there, Mr. Chair?
Yes. Well, let me just get clarification. When you say mayor of Memphis, do you mean the mayor of Shelby County?
It says Shelby.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Shelby, I'm sorry.
Yeah, want to make sure.
Sorry,
we-
yes,
clear.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yes,
Yep.
sir.
Representative Parks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What's the reason that they have not signed a contract? Is it because they want more than what you're offering, and is it costing them more than what you're offering, or what's the reason behind that? You know, I'm sure there's a reason why they have not signed the contract.
Good afternoon, Representative
Good
Parkinson. I would ask the commissioner to hesitate to comment a little bit on this because there is some active litigation involving the department and Shelby County currently related to this particular matter. And so we can't speak for the motivations of Mayor Harris and why he wouldn't speak with the department, but we have been actively involved in discussing with Shelby County, making sure that we can move the appropriate inmates as necessary. That was a longstanding agreement that involved inmates being housed in Shelby County for 6 years and less. And so sorting through that is a complicated matter.
Okay, just one last question, Mr. Chair.
Representative Parks.
Is it the state law mandate that Shelby County house state inmates?
In a classic answer for an attorney, it depends. And so there are certain inmates that would be mandated to be housed in Shelby County. And of course, part of that is based on the laws as they're written by the General Assembly and what are supposed to be housed locally. So that would be people who are serving probation violations or split confinements, and historically people who have been sentenced to serve less than 6 years. And then if the Shelby County judges put on the judgment form that it was mandated that they be served locally, that's something that the department is obligated to honor based on the separation of powers there.
All right, there are 1,000 based on what's published. There are 1,000 state inmates that are being housed in Shelby County right now, and where the payment for the cost of housing those inmates, regardless whether it's $41 or whatever the negotiated amount is creating a possibly adding to the deficit of Shelby County's budget, which is then being placed on the backs of taxpayers of Shelby County, which is unfair to the taxpayers of Shelby County. And I don't know what needs to happen for it to be worked out. But this obviously needs to be worked out because it's unfair to the taxpayers of Shelby County to be, footing the bill for the state of Tennessee when they've already paid their taxes to the state of Tennessee. So this is double taxation basically. And so I don't know what needs to happen, but I hope it happens fast, and I hope that we can, rectify the situation. And, and I'm not pointing fingers at you, Commissioner, or anybody else or the mayor, but it needs to be rectified. It needs to be rectified soon. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you very much. Speaker Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, a couple of questions regarding cell phone jamming. I know we've talked about that in the past, and one of the obstacles has been the FCC. Has there been any progress made toward approvals or conversations with them about the possibility of us being able to move forward with that as a state?
Yeah, it's still pending a vote in DC. It's been published and passed. We've made our comments, so we're just waiting for Congress to vote on it.
Okay, well, we'll probably have to continue to wait, I assume, based on the dysfunction in Washington. Do we have any idea what the cost would be associated with that if we were granted that approval?
I don't have that information. No, I do not know.
And then last question, Mr. Chairman, are there any jamming possibilities with Axon Enterprises? Is there a possibility if the FCC, if we can't move forward there, are there possibilities with cell phone jamming opportunities or services that they offer?
Well, that's a great question. There's a lot of vendors out there who have provided demonstrations to us about cell phone jamming. They just haven't been all that reliable for the amount of money that they're requesting. And that's what the issue is, because most times the inmates don't have the phones on them. They have them stashed in secret locations and then shut off, so you can't catch them until they're actually using, or they have someone else holding. So we've had a number of vendors show us some demonstrations at our facilities, but there was nothing that was worth the investment for us. Where if this bill passes, which everybody believes it will be a tremendous asset for us in the facilities.
Okay, good to know. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, Representative Sparks, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner. I want to thank Deputy Commissioner Richard Muckle and Ashley Fuqua for always being attentive to my issues. I've got a question from one of my county commissioners I hope he'll be chairman of public safety here soon. He said our county, Rutherford County, which is the fastest growing county in the state, spend over $6 million a year. Property taxes make up the shortfall in state funding on prisoners, just like Parkinson had mentioned in his county. The state's passed mandatory sentencing on a lot of offenders that fail to fund that mandatory time they spend in our jail because they live in the county jail. We either need to relax mandatory sentencing or come up with new funding source for counties to take care of on this issue. It's a big issue for my county, just like it is for others. But, I wanted to ask, how much is a new state prison if we have to build a new state prison?
I couldn't answer that question. I haven't looked at that or did any research on that.
Yes, sir. Well, I know my county, we're having our new jail, our proposed jail is going to be about $400 million, and we can't fund our schools. It's a serious, serious issue that's totally unsustainable. I wouldn't want your job, but one of the questions I had, what keeps you up at night? What do you worry about the most?
Staff homicide and inmate escape.
Yes, sir. And that goes back to my next question. I know it's been a challenge. You're down, 450 correctional officers, is that right?
Yes, correct.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What are you seeing that's being creative to kind of retain and recruit new correctional officers?
We have stated in testimony in the past that when we go out and we talk to our staff across the state, things that they look for is bringing longevity back, assistance with childcare, and in some areas of the state, affordable housing. Those things would be very attractive to retain our staff.
Representative Sparks? Good. All right, thank you. Next on the list, Chairman Hawk. Chairman Hawk, you're recognized.
Forgive me for the delay there, Chairman.
No problem. Go right ahead.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Thank you very much. As we've talked a little bit about where my question is leading, but Tennessee has been and will continue to be very tough on crime. Prisons should not be easy. But I understand that the homicide rate in our Tennessee prisons among inmates has increased since last year, with 4 months left to go in our fiscal year. In October, there was a brutal inmate murder in Turney Center, and staff watched. I'm being told, anecdotally, staff had watched this. Dear friend and very skilled attorney Foy will probably advise you not to answer some of the questions I'm going to go down the road, so I'm not even going to go down that road. Tell me, what are we doing for our constituents whose family expect them, after they've paid their debt to society, to come home? What are we doing to ensure that our financial investments are being used properly in that way, sir?
Well, I think one of the investments we're doing is in our education and our vocational trade areas. We've expanded our TCAP programs from 16 to about 32, 34. We've implemented the tablet systems in our our agency where we're having about over 1 million certificates where inmates are taking classes and performing things on the tablet. We are strengthening our rehabilitation efforts with our TCOMs and our partnerships with our external stakeholders. And we're actively changing our training curriculum where we're trying to have that more of a contact with the staff and the inmates, having more of a conversational type of environment than just a disciplinary type of environment. But we're also holding inmates accountable, I think, more so today than we were probably in the past. We've changed our disciplinary structure. We've looked at the serious offenses and we have taken the credits and we've stand firm on that. So, you know, as we're bringing more violent criminals into prison, that doesn't mean the violence is going away once they're in prison. So with technology and with our additional staff, I think I believe as a commissioner, we're doing the right thing. Am I going to sit here and say it's not going to happen? It's going to happen. It's prison. But I think we're using every dollar we can and invest in the inmates' rehabilitation and reentry. We also look at inmates that are in max custody that are about ready to release and place them in a step-down program so they're not releasing from lockdown, so they have some interaction with people and staff prior to go to community. So I think we're doing everything we can, but we're always open to any suggestions that anyone has. I think if we could do something better.
And thank you. And out of all that you said, inmate accountability is what I heard. And I would have answered the question the exact same way you answered the question. I would have said, we've got this, and this. But ultimately, inmate accountability, more time, more prison time needs to be a part of this. And I understand the safety of our staff is what you just said keeps you awake at night, as does for our constituents, the safety of their family members that are in there as well. So that's certainly something. You mentioned something about maximum security. Is Turney Center still classified even after this homicide as a medium security risk facility?
Yes, we haven't changed any of our security designations at any of our facilities.
Thank you, Chairman Hogg. Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner. By the way, you have the best hair of any commissioner in the entire governor's cabinet. We appreciate that. Cochran and I specifically appreciate that. So on a very, very serious note, I will echo what my friend from Shelby County said. It is far past time for us to build another prison. I would like us to be very thoughtful about that. I know that's something that's not within your purview, but as the legislature and as we have a new governor coming in next year, it is time to build a new facility. And in my humble opinion, there should never be a state prisoner that is being housed in a local jail minus a contract with that jail to specifically, hold local prisoners. What are your thoughts?
Well, as I said, and as I work for the governor, I am managing our bed space based on what we have and the population that we have, and that's what I'm doing. If there's discussions to build another prison, then I'll have those discussions. But at this moment, I don't believe I need to build one at this time.
And I understand that, Commissioner. Are recidivism rates lower in state prisons or in local jails as a general rule?
I want to say they're in our state prisons. We've reduced during Governor Lee's tenure. We've reduced our recidivism rate, I think, by 7 or 8%.
And are there more programs in our state facilities or in the local jails to benefit those prisoners?
There's more in the state prisons.
And Mr. Chairman, I won't go down the list, but we can pretty much go through any list you want to. A convicted felon is going to be better served, and the people of this state are going to be better protected if they're in a state facility versus a local jail, which by definition is designed for a short stay, usually less than a year. And we've stretched that out to 6, 8, 10 years at times because of practices that we have chosen to follow here in the state. But again, to my friend from Shelby County and his comments, I mean, it just simply is a conversation we can continue to have. And Commissioner, I understand the position you're in. You work at the pleasure of the governor. And so you've given us exactly the answer you should right now. But as we turn the page to the next governor, I hope it's a conversation we continue. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Representative Love, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner. Thank you for your presentation. For many years, it has been my understanding that the rehabilitation process starts once someone enters the facility, that you start at that moment for those who could qualify for reentry into society, that the programs start at that moment. Wanted to see if you could give us an update on the success of programs like the Higher Education Initiative, which provides college education for persons who are incarcerated, but also the success of a program that used to be, may still be in place, Take One, where we reach out to our faith-based institutions and ask them to just take one person as they're coming out of incarceration to make sure that they are integrated back into society the best way they can. Representative Shaw and I were talking about that, about how we were in conversation some years back. I'm not sure if it's still in place or not, and if it is, how it's going.
Yeah, I'll comment on one thing, and then I'll turn it over to my Assistant Commissioner, Gail Finkel, who has oversight of rehabilitation services in the Education Department. We always say that rehabilitation starts on the first day of incarceration, and just the basic of getting your bed made, you're going to somewhere on time. You know, in today's society, it's very difficult to get people to show up on time. So even that little skill has impact. But to answer your other questions, I'll turn it over to AC Finkel.
Good morning, Assistant Commissioner Gail Finkel. Thank you for asking your questions about education. And I'll talk about the mentor program next, which is formerly known as Take One. Over the past few years under this administration, we have doubled our TCAT footprint. We've also expanded CTE programs, I think from 850 completions and certifications to 1,300. We're tracking toward 1,300 this year. In addition to that, I think you heard from TBR, Tennessee Board of Regents, earlier about how we have come together in partnership with them to provide even more access to individuals who maybe not be able to attend a classroom, but could have some of this really important evidence-based programming on their tablets. The skills that these individuals gain are real-life skills. We're working on things like a pneumatic program at Riverbend in hopes that these individuals get out and can work on manufacturing equipment and do equipment maintenance. It's going to be the first program that we've offered like it. In addition to that, working with TBR, they were given money for a mobile learning center. So we're going to work with them and kind of determine what programming makes the most sense in each one of these 3 mobile learning centers, one for each Grand Region. So we haven't taken our foot off the gas on education, and we have seen significant improvement in attitudes. There's always going to be those behavioral issues that we face in a prison setting, but it has proven very successful. Education, keep them busy, give them opportunity and hope, and let them see where this can get them someday. And it's not just education and skills for the sake of having a skill. We're mapping it to what the job demand is in the community at large across Tennessee, working with major employers. You mentioned Take One. Take One, we are working very closely with the governor's office of, Volunteer and Mentor Initiative. Let's just call it that. And we are instituting a brand new volunteer mentor program, which has proven very successful so far in the initial pilot at DeBerry and DJRC. And we've just now brought Riverbend on, and we have, I think, I want to say 64 to 84, don't quote me, I'll have to get you that number, matched mentor-mentee mentorship partnerships happening right now. And we're going to be working closely with them to expand that across the state. That really helps these individuals tap into community support. You know, sometimes you don't have family that you can rely on, but to have someone who can help connect you with those resources when you release is pretty vital. And that's been very successful so far, and we're going to be growing that across the state.
Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much for that, because I know that we talk about reducing recidivism, giving those who are incarcerated a chance to get a certificate or get hours toward a completion of a degree. It is very important because it does give them some hope that when they get back into society, they can be successful and don't have to go back in. And that was one of the programs, I'm trying to remember the name of it, where the state would almost, I won't say guarantee, but there was almost a warranty that they would give an employer if they did hire someone, that if the person did cause some issues, I'm trying to remember the name of that program, that the state would not hold them harmless, but the state would be in collaboration with them to try to make sure that the business was okay. And I'm trying to remember, and I'll get back with you about that. I can't think of the name of it right now, but it was a program where the person, when released, could present that to the employer to say that the state of Tennessee is supporting me in this work.
Yeah.
Certificate of employment.
Yes, that's what it was.
Do we still have that program? It's a certificate of employment where the state, employability, where the state would say, when I'm released, I have this certificate and I give it to the employer. The employer then has some reassurance that I'm not going to engage in certain things in the workplace, and it's backed by the state to a degree.
So I don't know about funding to the employer. Okay, good, all right. But I do know that we give, every individual that releases gets a reentry packet. In their reentry packet, they have certificates for everything that they've completed. If they're halfway through a TCAT program, they work with these navigators that will help them get into a local TCAT to continue their education, with THEI offering their wraparound services. I don't know if there's a specific name to a program beyond doing several things like that. But every individual who releases will have something in their reentry packet that would indicate they're employable if they've completed certain courses.
Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I will follow back up you with it, because I'm trying to, I know it was on our website some time back, but that also assured employers sometimes that the person had been through a certain process and had certain skills and training, and they could be a bit more reliable. And that was the way we were saying to employers, be encouraged to look to hire persons as they're coming out of incarceration because they have met these metrics, and you have this, again, it doesn't say to the business that the state will reimburse you financially. It doesn't say you have to hire them, but that was just one more tool that the particular person could use to present to the potential employer to say, I have a certificate of employability from the state and I've met certain metrics. I'll look into it and get back to the commissioner and your staff about that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Leader Camper, you're recognized.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, earlier when you were talking about what was happening in Shelby County, and I understand the legal aspect of things, did you say that the contract, that they were under a current contract and in the process of signing a new one, and you have not signed the new one, but they're under contract, or has that contract expired? That's what I was trying to get clarity on. Oh, not yet. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Let's talk.
Elizabeth Foy, Chief of Staff. And just to answer that, the contract with Shelby County expired in July or June 30th of 2025.
Okay. So then under the terms of that contract, is it provisions within the contract that still will allow you all to pay for the inmates being there until a new contract is signed? And if so, I guess it's under a stated rate or something like that.
If I may.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, you're recognized. Go right ahead.
The way that the state pays the county jails is pursuant to the Appropriations Act, which dictates the exact amount that the department is permitted to pay each county jail. And then each of those can also receive an additional bonus or the stipend, depending on the programming that they offer in the county jails.
Right.
The exceptions to those to that is really Davidson County and Shelby County currently. And those payments depend on the contractual agreements that each county enters into with the state. Those have been longstanding contracts previously. And so What can currently be paid, I don't necessarily want to speak to because I believe that's really the subject of the pending lawsuit.
Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't asking how much or any of that, but it looked like in a contract, there would be some type of language in the contract that talks about or addresses payment until a new contract is signed. Or, hey, it's just terminated, didn't sign, sorry. You know, it seemed like it's some type of provisions in the contract. That's what I was trying to get, the question I was trying to get at. But I understand it's being litigated, so I wouldn't want to put the commissioner in the, in any type of situation. Thank you. Also, Mr. Commissioner, I think you mentioned, something about the safety task force. And I don't know if it was, the pressures of it or having to, I don't know, maybe shift resources to handle it. What were you trying to explain to us about that? I was looking for the PowerPoint, but we didn't have one.
Oh, no, it was in my speech.
Yeah.
We assisting the Sheriff Bonner with taking up to 300 of his detainees from his jails to assist the task force as they were doing their mission. That was our agreement with them, and that's what we've been doing since the task force has started. So we've had a great working relationship with Sheriff Bonner and his staff, and we feel that will continue during however long this operation takes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. So it didn't result in any additional pressures or resources being maneuvered around. You're just able to handle the agreed upon, what you said, 300?
Well, the pressures that it causes is it slowed movement from other counties, their state inmates into our facility. We're still doing that, but we're obligated to give about 300 of beds to Shelby County during this task force. So that gave us a little bit of a slowdown on some of our other county jails, but we're still managing and we're still working at the system where we can do it fairly and equitably move with the other 94 counties.
Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner. And lastly, I think I mentioned this to you before. I want to thank you for helping me with one of the inmates, constituent of mine, was dealing with trying to be closer to home so that the parents could visit and try to help with the rehabilitation process. So I really appreciate that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you very much. Next on the list, Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After the riots at Trousdale, gang members were transferred to other institutions across the state. It seems that they were dropped into general population, and now we are gaining footholds in these institutions. 4 gang members recently tried to stab one of the sergeants at Bledsoe. And it is reported that 50% of the population at Bledsoe is now gang affiliated. Trousdale, Bledsoe is just a processing institution. How do you plan on fixing this?
Well, Bledsoe is our diagnostic center, but there is also a portion of general population inmates there, both male and female. All our inmates go through the diagnostic and they get classified and they get appropriately placed in one of the state or private facilities. When the incident occurred at Trousdale, I made a decision to reduce the population there, reduce the type of inmate there, and spread those inmates out to other state facilities. I don't know where the documentation is that 50% of Bledsoe is gang related, or I forgot the phrase that you use. I'd have to ask for that documentation to check. But I mean, these are the folks that are getting locked up in Tennessee, and when they go to prison, their gang affiliation doesn't stop once they go into prison. So we manage our gang population through population management through the other 10 state facilities and 4 contract facilities. So I'm not sure what the question is, what I'm going to do with Bledsoe. Bledsoe will remain as the diagnostic center of general population, and we look at every incident of every inmate that occurs. We go through the investigation and we hold them accountable. And if movement is appropriate to a different facility, then we do that. So I'm not sure about the 50%. I'd have to look at the statistics, sir, because I don't know if what the actual percentage of gangs at Bledsoe is at the top of my head.
Chairman Crawford.
All the gains from the Public Safety Act financially investments in TDOC have now slipped away, despite the creation of 3 more assistant commissioners and 5 deputy assistant commissioners. There seems to be a significant investment in salaries for leadership positions, yet seem to be that we're not reducing the violence, and there's still assaults on staff, and inmates are at an all-time high, and the recidivism rate is climbing. How do you respond to that?
Well, I'm not sure about the assistant commissioner positions that you required. The assistant commissioner positions were the ones that were in place when I arrived as commissioner. Some of them were vacant, and I filled them, and I followed the process that was required from the governor's office to fill those, and those were approved. We added a few deputy commissioner positions because of the large volume of workload that we had, and trying to reduce the violence and the task force. By adding some of those additional positions, we were able to put more leadership on the ground into places when we have a situation occur. So I believe it has helped the department. We're always looking at ways to reduce violence. One of the initiatives is the drone AI initiative, which I discussed in my opening statement. I believe that initiative in itself will reduce violence and be more proactive. So we're always looking at technology. We've invested in technology. We're always looking at staff training to reduce these acts of violence. And I think if I get that program up and running the way I want it to this year, we will see changes in our statistics for violence.
Chairman Crawford.
The cost of the 12 top leadership positions in TDOC cost is now $2.5 million a year. That's what's been provided to me. Can you tell me whether that's true or not true?
I could look that up if you identified what 5 positions you're speaking of, yes.
Okay.
I could look it
The
up.
top 12 positions of
top
leadership.
12, sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
And if you can just provide that to the chairman, he'll make sure the committee gets it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, Chairman Hale. Chairman Hale, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. About 7 months ago, I had, maybe 8 months ago, we were getting word, of course, Trousdale Turner joins my district. So we were getting a lot of word of things that were going on in the prison. So I had already asked for a meeting with y'all. And then we have a riot over there, which kind of escalated things. And when I had the meeting in my office, I was told that I was asking difficult questions. But Commissioner, they were straightforward questions. It wasn't you, it was your staff. They were straightforward questions for my people. One of which was the ask of some kind of an alert system. The Saturday night of the riot at Trousdale Turner, there was so much information of 10 inmates being on the loose and all of these things. We had widow people, we had children, we had a lot of people that were feared that there was people running loose. And that was left that way overnight until media reports the next day. So first of all, I'd like to ask if there's been any discussion of that. We have all kinds of weather alert systems and all of these things within a certain radius that we could get correct information to the general public that's outside instead of them being in fear. So could you address that first?
Yes, thanks for the question. I agree with you totally with your question. On the evening that occurred, it took a while for the message to get to me, and there was a number of different reports occurring out there because people were calling 911, and then rumors just started spreading. So we have a system in place where it's a chain of command where folks at each facility have a contact to call, and under certain situations to call 911, et cetera. And I think what happened, there was just a breakdown in communication because things were happening rapidly. This is something that we will and have been addressing through training, because what happened was messages got out. There was calls. I had the same calls that you got. I heard that 200 inmates were in the streets of Trousdale, et cetera, and none of that was true, and it was just a lot of misinformation. So what we've been trying to do is reemphasize with our leadership from the central office down to our institution levels about chain of command, notification, and following that protocol. I will say though, when a situation happens, people sometimes just react a certain way. And once it gets out, it's really hard to dial it back. Having an alert system is only as good as if the people use it correctly. And we already have a system for notification, but I'd be happy to talk with you further about that system if it's something that would work for TDOC.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman Hill.
So I would love to have some more conversation about that. So it appears that we've had some major issues, and I would like for there was some conversation with my colleague here about some of the transfer from Trousdale. So can you kind of, I think when that was begun, there was supposed to be less violent, more minimal security and stuff. And then that continued to be more violent criminals there. And then we've had a riot and we've had all of these issues. So can you kind of tell me where we're at with Trousdale at this time?
Yeah. And I could have my assistant commissioner of prison operations help me out with this. I know that since the incident happened, we've made an effort to reduce the population. It was around 2,400 at the time of the incident. We're around 1,900 now. We've been looking at males 50 years and older with 4 to 6 year release date and less violence. So we've been moving those inmates in there. I think there's still a few hundred inmates that we still have to move out. We've also partnered with our Tricor. We're going to start a commissary operation in there so we can get more work involved into that prison. So we have moved that population and have reduced the type of inmate that is in that prison. But with that goes, those inmates have to go somewhere. And they're going to go to a state prison or to another private prison. So we did disperse them throughout the state. But to where we're at on the actual movement, I can turn it over to Assistant Commissioner Thomas if you need more specifics.
Linda Thomas, Assistant Commissioner for Prison Operations. So as the commissioner said, they were roughly around 2,300 at the time of that incident. We have outright moved over 800 inmates out of that facility. And we've actually, I would use the term flipped, meaning changed the population, what they had, and tried to identify a more lower security inmate to be placed in there. And we flipped about 600 inmates, and we still have inmates that we can flip. I think the commissioner mentioned trying to establish criteria. And I think at this point, we're up to inmates serving 10 years or less is what we flipped. So we've stopped right there and flipped that population of about 600 inmates. And their incident rates are lower since that incident, much lower.
And did that begin, I'm sorry,
Chairman Hill, you're recognized.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
So did that begin immediately after the riot? I mean, because there were some issues that I was made aware of and stuff that were ongoing before that. So I guess the question would be, did we wait till that happened till we started that? Or was that something we were?
We moved 2 bus loads within 24 hours of that incident.
Okay, all right. And final question, hopefully, unless y'all give wrong answer. So when we look at our prison system, it seems like, and the conversation that I had last July in my office upstairs was that we have some issues with our privately run prisons. So what are we doing to truly address that? They're understaffed. They're just several issues that we see with the privately run prisons in the state. So what is TDOC doing to fix this for our people? Our people deserve better. So what are we doing?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for the question. I will say that, and I've said this before, that Core Civic provides relief for population management. They provide beds for population management. We have teams in place that monitor the contract. We look at every incident that occurs, and we deal with that appropriately. Their staffing has gotten much better in this past year. They're hiring. Their vacancy rates have dropped just like ours have dropped. We meet with their leadership on a regular basis. We invite their leadership to our training and to our conferences, and we keep having open dialogue. So I just think that sometimes because it's a private prison, it gets that stigmatism because it's for profit. But I will say that they are accountable to us and accountable to our policies, and we do hold them accountable on every incident that occurs. And when it came to Trousdale, we sat down with them, and they made a hefty investment that they didn't pass on to the state to turn things around at that facility and their other facilities. And we visit as an exec team each one of our state and private prisons at least 2 to 3 times a year. And we've always invited members of the General Assembly to go with us to see what's actually happening in these prisons, because I think sometimes it gets lost in translation of exactly what's happening in these prisons because of incidents that occur. The good things that are happening gets overlooked. The programming, the rehabilitation, the camaraderie gets overlooked. But I understand that, they can do better and we can do better, but I think we're working together to make that happen.
Okay. Well, I would love to have the opportunity, sorry, Chairman.
You go right ahead.
To continue the conversation to make sure that we're doing the best for, because it involves a lot of people that I serve and my people, I want to make sure are safe on the outside just as much as the people that's on the inside. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'll make an appointment to come see you personally.
All right. Thank you. Representative Shaw, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your comments. Thank you so much. I wanted to ask you, talking about the private prisons, would there be the drone program that you're talking about, would they be required to do the same thing as you all?
Well, that will be a discussion that I would have to have with Core Civic leadership. The one caveat to that is if I require them to do that added cost, they might want to pass on to the state in future contracts. And that's something that's always frowned upon, is the inflators and the additional money so I'd have to have those discussions. We haven't had any of those discussions at this point. We're trying to get our system up and running, but I believe I believe they would be willing to entertain a conversation with me on that.
Well, I want to thank you, Commission, because you've always invited me to, when you come to our district, which we have 2 private prisons, and you've always had an open door policy and kept us informed. So I really appreciate that. And I will say this, I appreciate the fact that we are saving some money by using this private service in Hardeman County. And it has added an additional 700 and some jobs. And about 85% of those jobs actually are in our county. So it's been a plus. Nobody wants anybody to be locked up, but if we got to do that, you have provided several jobs for rural area for us, and we appreciate that. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I have no one else on the list, which means I've got to go back to that first question that I asked because I'm still a little confused on that. So In fiscal year 24, that prosecution account was 134 actual. In fiscal year 25, it was 143 actual. In fiscal year 26, initially it was 173.7 million, which there was that reduction of 20 million, which brought it down to 153. And so then once we made that transaction of 20 million, and then the request was going to be for another 13 million, why make that transfer to start with? I guess that's where I'm confused. Why did you even make that 20 million transfer out of that account and then turn right around and ask for 13?
Yes, sir. So when we were in discussions with Finance and Administration about these work program adjustments, this was December 2024. So we were working on the fiscal year 26 budget, and that was one of the goals was to to shuffle some funding that we weren't using in order to cover that large medical contract increase. At that time, the population projections did not forecast the need for additional just funds. We were fine with the population projections at that time. But this last summer, when the population projections were updated, that's where we saw the need. And it's not a matter of it will. We expect to see that population there. So it's a matter of covering that population.
So if you got the 13 million that you requested, which would make that account go up to 166, so are you going to be short now, since right now it's only, it's 153. So are you going to be short now, is what you're saying, 13 million? So where's it going to come from if you didn't get to 13 million?
The 13 million is requested for fiscal year 27. And in the current year, our current projections is showing us a little bit short, and we should be able to cover that internally. But going into fiscal year 27, that's where the model is showing the need for the 13 million. But part of that does cover the stipends. It's not all for the population.
Okay. So where will you get that 13 million if you do not get that, if you do not receive that?
We're currently, so it would inevitably be salary savings if they were available.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. I have no one else on the list. So thank you, Commissioner. Thank you and your team for being here. Really appreciate that. All right. Without objection, we are going to go back into session. We are back in session, and members, this does conclude the hearings for this morning. We will return at 4 p.m. or immediately following session for one additional budget hearing by the Department of General Service. So without objection, we stand in recess.